I had always thought life was simple, or at least that's what they had led me to believe. My parents, perfect in their own way, had always emphasized the importance of hard work, family, and faith. We were a family that went to church every Sunday without fail, a family where everyone had a place, and everything seemed to follow a clear path. I'd always been taught that if you worked hard enough, you'd get what you deserved, and that was the life I thought I was building with Emily. Emily and I had been together for 2 years, since our freshman year of college. We had met in the library, both of us buried in our textbooks, and I could still remember how her laugh had echoed in the quiet study room. It was then that I had known this was something real. We were a team, no question about it. Both of us had big dreams, and together, it felt like we could tackle anything. I saw the future so clearly. Finish our degrees, find stable jobs, maybe buy a house on the outskirts of the city, have a dog, start a family. Just the simple, ideal life. I could even picture it. Our little house with a white picket fence, a backyard for the kids to run around in. The typical American dream. And we were on track. But none of that had prepared me for what was coming. It was a Thursday night when Emily came to me, her eyes wide, as if she had something monumental to say. We had just finished dinner, and she had been quieter than usual, fidgeting with her hands. The moment she spoke, it was like time slowed down. "Dylan," she started, her voice shaky. "I'm pregnant." I froze, unable to find the right words. My brain seemed to shut off for a moment, processing the unexpected reality of her statement. What I finally managed to whisper, my heart pounding in my chest, was, "How are you sure? I mean, how long have you known?" She bit her lip, her hands wringing in her lap. "I found out last week, Dylan." I was scared. I didn't know what to do, but I couldn't keep this from you anymore. I'm going to have a baby." I stood there silent, my mind racing. This was the last thing I had expected. Not now. Not when we were still in school. Not when everything was still up in the air. My mind was filled with 1,000 thoughts, none of them making sense. We had plans. We had dreams. And this was not part of them. I sat down beside her, trying to steady my breath. "Emily, we're not ready for this. We're still figuring things out. I haven't even finished school yet. We've barely started our lives. How can we handle this?" Emily's eyes welled up with tears, but she held my gaze. "I know it's not the plan, Dylan. I didn't expect this either." She paused, trying to steady herself, "But I want to keep it. I know we're scared, but I don't think I can just walk away from this. I can't imagine not having this child." Her words stung, and I felt a knot tighten in my chest. "But Emily, we're not ready. We can barely support ourselves right now, let alone a child. This changes everything." She nodded slowly, her hands now resting on her lap. "I know it changes everything. I know it's scary, and I'm scared too. But it's real, Dylan. It's happening. I can't pretend it's not, and I want to do this. I want to have this baby." I felt a wave of panic rise within me, a flood of emotions crashing over me. "But what about our future? What about us? I don't know if I can do this. I'm just not sure how we can handle everything." My head was spinning. Emily reached for my hand, her fingers cold against mine. "I'm scared too, Dylan, but my heart knows what I want. We don't have all the answers, but I think we can figure it out together." I looked into her eyes, her expression firm but tender. The uncertainty lingered in the air between us, but I could see it in her eyes. The conviction, the determination that she had already made up her mind. She wasn't asking me for permission. She was simply telling me what she needed. She had made the decision. I couldn't blame her. I was terrified too, but I also knew that this was no longer just about me. It was about us, about the two of us stepping into something we had never planned for, but were now committed to. As much as I was afraid, as much as I worried about the future, I couldn't just walk away. I supported Emily's choice because deep down, I knew it was the right thing, for her, for us. I was ready to face this challenge. And the more I reflected, the more I realized this was a new chapter for both of us. But nothing in my life could have prepared me for what happened next. It was a cold morning when everything changed, when everything shattered. Emily had been quiet for days, her usual vibrant self replaced by a cloud of anxiety and guilt. I had no idea what was going on in her head, but I had sensed something was wrong. She couldn't keep the secret any longer, and when she finally told me, the world as I knew it crumbled beneath my feet. "Dylan," she began, her voice trembling, "I need to tell you something I should have told you a long time ago." I felt the pit in my stomach grow. I had no idea where this was going, but I could see the tears in her eyes. the guilt written across her face. She looked away from me, wiping her face with her hands, as if she could erase the words she was about to speak. I wasn't completely honest with you. I was also with Ben. My brain couldn't process it. Ben, my best friend. The thought was unfathomable. I stared at her, my heart racing as my world spun around me. What are you talking about? You and Ben? I whispered, barely able to breathe. Emily, you can't mean that. Her sobs became more frantic, and she covered her face with her hands, unable to look at me. I'm so sorry, Dylan. Please. I never meant for this to happen. It was a mistake. A mistake? I repeated, my voice rising. Emily, how could you do this to me? To us? After everything we've been through, 2 years together, and this is how you repay me? Her voice was barely audible through her tears. I didn't plan for this, Dylan. I never wanted to hurt you, but it happened. And now I'm pregnant, and Ben is the father. The room around me seemed to close in, spinning faster and faster. Ben, the one person I thought I could trust more than anyone, my best friend, had betrayed me in the worst way possible. He had slept with Emily. He was the father of the baby. I felt the anger, the hurt, the disbelief building inside me until I couldn't take it anymore. I needed to hear it from him. I needed to hear him say it, own it, because I couldn't fathom that it was true. I grabbed my phone and dialed Ben's number. The call rang twice before he picked up, his voice casual as if nothing was wrong. Yeah? Ben said. I took a deep breath. Ben, we need to talk. I know what happened between you and Emily. You need to tell me, man. Tell me it's not true. There was a long pause on the other end. When he finally spoke, it was with a coldness that I hadn't expected. Dylan, it happened. What's the big deal? We're all adults here. It was a one-time thing, and honestly, it doesn't change anything. I don't see why we should keep dwelling on it. We should move on. I felt my stomach twist in anger. Move on? You're telling me to move on after what you did? You slept with my girlfriend, and you think that's nothing? You're my best friend, Ben. You were supposed to be my best friend. Ben sighed on the other end, his tone uninterested. Look, I'm sorry it worked out this way, but it happened. There's no need to make a big scene about it. You're going to have to accept it eventually. I felt my hands shake, and my mind was spinning. The betrayal, the indifference in his voice. It was like a slap in the face. So that's it? You're just going to brush it off like it's no big deal? I asked. Yeah, Ben replied, pretty much. The call ended with a quiet click, and I was left standing there, my heart pounding in my chest. I couldn't comprehend what had just happened. Ben hadn't apologized. He hadn't even cared. He acted as if he had every right to do what he did. I reached home. Ben was in his room. As soon as he saw me, he started to run. I caught him and started to beat the daylights out of him. I kept beating him until my knuckles started to bleed. My father rushed in and separated me. He grabbed me and took me out of his room, going back to nurse Ben. The confusion, the anger, the pain, all of it surged through me. But it didn't stop there. My mother came rushing in, and then I told her about the pregnancy. Her reaction was unsettling in its calmness. She didn't seem shocked, angry, or even worried. It was as if she had anticipated this all along. She was more concerned about Ben than she was about his actions. She looked at me, her eyes cold and distant, before muttering something under her breath. This is part of a divine plan, Dylan. It's all in God's hands. We must accept it, just as everything happens for a reason. We have to trust that this is part of a bigger picture. I stared at her, stunned. What do you mean accept it, Mom? This isn't just some test of faith. This is real. My life is falling apart, and you're telling me to just accept it? She shrugged, her expression unchanging. Everything happens for a reason. You have to accept it, Dylan. There's a higher purpose to all of this, even if you don't see it yet. We must all play our part in the plan. My father, who had always been the strictest of the two, simply nodded in agreement with my mother as she spoke of divine plans. They didn't even address Ben's involvement, as if it didn't matter, as if it was nothing more than a footnote in the grand scheme of things. I tried to speak, tried to explain how I felt, how betrayed I was, how angry and lost I was, but the words felt hollow, meaningless in the face of their cold indifference. But when they started talking about family, when they began urging me to support Ben, that's when I completely lost it. You need to rise above this, Dylan, my mother said softly, her voice calm, almost rehearsed. This is our opportunity to show love and forgiveness. Your brother made a mistake, and we all have to accept it. Everything happens for a reason, Dylan. You need to release your anger and trust that it's part of a divine plan. I could feel the blood boiling in my veins. It was as if their words were daggers aimed at the very core of my being. I wanted to shout, to scream at them how wrong they were, how utterly misguided they were in their view of this situation. But I couldn't. I felt frozen, my chest tightening with a mixture of frustration and despair. Mom, you don't understand, I said through gritted teeth, trying to hold back the tears of anger. This isn't just some plan. This is real. Ben, my brother, betrayed me. And you're telling me to forgive him just like that? My father, who usually kept his emotions under tight control, looked at me with a cool expression, as if the situation didn't even affect him. Dylan, you're the older brother, he said, his tone authoritative. It's your responsibility to set the example for the family. We've all sacrificed so much for you. Now it's your turn to step up. You need to be the bigger person to show compassion. Compassion? My mind was reeling. Compassion for what? For the man who had stolen everything from me? How could they ask me to do that? How could they not see the pain I was in, the confusion? How could they ignore the fact that Ben, the one person I thought I could trust, had broken my heart in the worst way possible? I clenched my fists, struggling to keep my composure. You don't get it, I said, my voice trembling with frustration. This is more than just being the bigger person. You're asking me to ignore the betrayal. You're asking me to pretend like everything's okay when it's not. You don't know what it feels like to have someone you love, someone you trusted, turn their back on you like this. My mother's face softened, but there was no understanding in her eyes, only pity. Dylan, you're making this harder than it has to be. You need to forgive him for your own peace of mind. We can't keep living in anger. You have to trust that this is all part of something bigger, something we can't control. Forgive him. The words left my lips before I even realized how loud I was. Forgive him? For what? For ruining my life? For destroying everything I thought I knew about my family and my future? Their response was always the same. They didn't want to face the reality of what had happened. They didn't want to acknowledge that I was in pain, that my future had been ripped out from under me. It was easier for them to retreat into their beliefs, to hide behind the idea of divine plans, than to admit that what had happened was cruel. I felt suffocated by their inability to see beyond their narrow view of the world. The days that followed were no better. Every conversation with my parents felt like a reminder that I was trapped in a life that wasn't mine. They continued to pressure me, telling me that I had to be a better person, that I had to forgive Ben, that I needed to rise above the situation. The more they insisted, the more I felt like I was suffocating. The more they pushed, the more I felt like I was losing myself. Dylan, my father said one evening as we sat at the dinner table, we've given you everything. We've worked hard, sacrificed for you, and now it's your turn to help fix things. This is your chance to show your family that you're a man of character, that you're stronger than this situation. Fix things? What was there to fix? How could I fix something that had been broken by betrayal and disregard? And the worst part was that they didn't even seem to understand how their words were making it worse. They kept telling me what I needed to do, what they thought was the right thing, but they weren't listening. They weren't hearing me. It felt like they were pushing me into a corner, trying to force me to bend to their will, to follow a path that wasn't my own. Every suggestion they made, every conversation we had, felt more and more like an attack on who I was. It wasn't love or support they were offering, it was manipulation. They were using their beliefs, their idea of what was right, to control me, to make me fit into a mold they had created long ago. They had made their decision. They were going to support Ben and Emily, and they expected me to align myself with them. I tried to stay calm, to reason with them, but the words came out in a rush, desperate, almost pleading. I can't do this, I said, my voice tight. I can't support Ben. Not after everything he's done. He betrayed me. How am I supposed to just forget that and act like everything's okay? My father's face turned red with anger. He slammed his fist on the table, making me flinch. You're being selfish, Dylan. This is about family. Your brother needs you, and you're turning your back on him when he needs you the most. We've always been there for you, and now it's time for you to step up. I too slammed my fist on the table and stood up. I'm not going to pretend like this is normal. What Ben did, it's not something I can just overlook. It's not about being a good brother. It's about trust, and right now, I don't trust him. My mother's voice cracked, and she reached out her hand, trembling as she grasped mine. Please, Dylan, she begged. You don't understand. This is a test of faith. God's plan is bigger than all of us. You can't turn your back on Ben. This is not the path you wanted, but it's the path God has chosen. If you just trust, if you just accept it, everything will work out. Her words didn't comfort me. They suffocated me. You don't get it, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. You never held Ben accountable. You never told him he was wrong. You've just let him do whatever he wants, and now you want me to play along? I can't do it. I stood up, my hand shaking as I tried to hold myself together. I have my own future to think about. I can't just drop everything and fix the mess he made. It's not my responsibility. They stared at me, silent for a long moment, before my father spoke again, his voice cold. Then you're no longer welcome here. The words hit me like a slap. My heart stopped for a moment. What? I asked, struggling to process what he had just said. You heard me, he said, his tone unyielding. We've made our decision. You can't stay here with this attitude. If you're not willing to support your family and accept the situation, then you need to leave. We can't have this kind of negativity in the house. Not now. I was stunned. You're kicking me out? Yes, he said flatly. You've made your choice, Dylan. Now we're making ours. I felt the world spin around me as the gravity of the situation hit me all at once. They were serious. They were really asking me to leave. But I have nowhere to go, I said, my voice shaking with a mix of disbelief and anger. This is my home. My whole life has been here. You'll figure it out, my mother said quietly, her eyes full of sorrow but also a sense of finality. Maybe this is for the best. Maybe you need to learn something from this. But if you're not going to support your brother, you can't stay here. I felt the tears welling up, but I refused to let them fall. I couldn't let them see how much they were breaking me. This isn't right, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Without another word, they both turned away, and I knew that was it. They had made their decision, and there was no going back. I grabbed my things, trying to keep my movement steady as if I could still hold on to some semblance of control. But I was losing everything, my family, my future, my dreams. Everything I had worked for felt like it was slipping through my fingers. I couldn't understand how they could do this to me, how they could dismiss my feelings, my future, so easily. But I was nothing to them now, not when Ben needed to be the focus. I had no place in their divine plan. And so, I walked through that door, leaving behind everything I had known. The first few weeks after I left were a blur. I crashed on a friend's couch, trying to make sense of the wreckage that had become my life. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the image of my room, now a nursery, and I felt like I was losing myself in it. I didn't want to feel sorry for myself. I didn't want to become a victim of my circumstances. But every time I remembered how everything had fallen apart, a wave of resentment washed over me, and I couldn't push it away. Nothing felt real anymore. My world, my future, everything I had believed in was gone. I didn't look back, but part of me wished I could understand how things had gone so wrong. How had it all crumbled so quickly? How had my family, the people who were supposed to support me, protect me, become strangers to me? My college fund, the money I had saved and trusted them to keep safe, was gone. It was now being used to raise their golden son's divine child. I could not recover my college fund. I lacked the resources to take legal action, and the idea of fighting it out in court felt like an uphill battle I couldn't win. The most painful thing, though, was the silence. For the first time in my life, I was not included in family plans. I wasn't part of anything anymore. No phone calls, no messages, no dinner invitations. It was as if they had simply erased me from their lives. I had always been the one they turned to, the one they relied on. My parents, who once promised me the world, had now closed their doors, treating me like a stranger. One day, I sent a simple message to my mother. How are you? I miss you guys. The response was short, almost dismissive. We're fine. Ben is doing well. He's really stepping up for Emily and the baby. I think he'll be a great dad. There was no mention of me, no recognition of the fact that I was still struggling, no concern for how I was dealing with everything. It was all about Ben and his new life, the new family, the one that had replaced me. The conversations I had with them, when they did happen, always centered on him. How he was taking responsibility, how he was committed to Emily, how he was going to be an exemplary father. It was as if everything had been forgotten, the betrayal, the hurt, the way he had crossed boundaries in the worst possible way. For them, none of it mattered. They had made their choice, and I was no longer part of the picture. I spent the following months simply trying to survive. I enrolled in classes at a community college, figuring it was better than nothing, even if it felt like a step back. I worked part-time at a coffee shop, doing my best to cover my expenses and keep my head above water. I tried not to think about the past, not to dwell on my parents' actions or the betrayal that had shattered everything. But no matter how hard I tried, the anger always returned. One night, after my shift at the coffee shop, I sat in the small, dimly lit room of my apartment. I had lost so much, the life I had dreamed of, the future I had planned. None of it existed anymore. I had been so focused on helping my family, on doing the right thing, that I never expected them to turn on me. I never thought they would choose Ben and Emily over me. And yet, here I was, alone. I looked around at the bare walls of my apartment, the reality of it all settling in. The anger, the hurt, the confusion, it was all still there, simmering beneath the surface. But more than anything, there was a deep, gnawing emptiness. Because no matter how hard I tried to move on, to rebuild, it felt like everything I had lost could never be replaced. It wasn't just the family I had been a part of. It was my sense of belonging, my place in the world. And that was something I could never get back. Years passed, and I never called my family again. I had long given up on any expectations of them. The silence between us had become a comfortable companion, one I had learned to live with. But one day, out of the blue, the number appeared on my screen, a number I hadn't seen or even considered in years. For a moment, I just stared at it, hesitant. The blood in my veins seemed to freeze as I weighed whether or not to answer. My heart pounded in my chest, the old wound still fresh, still raw. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to let it ring out into nothingness, as it deserved. But the curiosity, the same curiosity that had driven so many of my decisions, prevailed. I tapped the screen and answered. Hello? My voice was tentative, cautious, betraying none of the storm raging inside me. Son, her voice came through the line, weak, trembling, broken. It was unmistakably her. My mother. She uttered my name like a prayer, as if just speaking it could somehow undo everything that had passed between us. It was as if the sound of my name on her lips could save her from the agony that had surely consumed her. I didn't speak immediately, letting the silence stretch between us. I wanted her to feel the weight of the years where she and my father had built this distance, where they had erased me from their lives as if I had never existed. I let that silence sink into her, let it linger like a thick fog. Her breath caught on the other end of the line, and it didn't take long before she began speaking again, her words stumbling over each other, disordered and desperate, as if she had rehearsed them over and over. But none of it was coming out the way she had imagined. Dylan, we've lost everything, she said, her voice quivering. The house, our savings, everything. We never saw it coming. It was a bad investment, something about fraud. I don't know. Your father, he was too proud to tell anyone, too proud to ask for help, until it was too late. And now we're barely scraping by. We can't even keep the lights on. We don't know what to do. Please. She paused, a crack in her voice like a dam breaking, and I could almost hear the tears gathering in the silence. I let her words hang there, suspended in the air like smoke in a closed room. She asked if I was still listening, and I realized I had been holding my breath. I exhaled slowly, keeping my tone deliberately neutral, distant. I wanted her to feel the gulf that had formed between us over the years, a gulf that no apology could ever bridge. I'm listening, I said flatly. Go on. She continued, her voice now shaking with the weight of her regret. I wish things had been different, Dylan. I regret everything, how he treated you. I never wanted to hurt you. Please come home. We need you. You're all we have left. Please, be the son we need now. Her words spilled out, each one more desperate than the last. I could feel the heaviness in her voice, the burden of everything she was asking me to fix. It was the same plea, the same begging she had given me years ago when they first cast me aside. But this time, it was different. The desperation in her tone was too much for me to ignore. It was almost as if she thought this call, these few words, could somehow undo all the damage they had done. I let the silence return for a moment. When I finally spoke, my voice was calm, almost impersonal. You know, it's been 3 years since you decided I wasn't needed, I said, each word coming out with the same cold detachment I had cultivated in the years since. 3 years since you took everything I had worked for and gave it to someone who didn't earn any of it. You chose him, and now you think that after all this time, a few tears and an apology will undo all of that? I paused, letting the weight of my words sink in. I spent the last 3 years rebuilding my life, brick by brick, in solitude. I didn't ask for this. I didn't ask to be abandoned by the people who were supposed to love me. And now you think you can call me and fix it all with a superficial apology? I didn't raise my voice. It wasn't necessary. Each word I spoke was like a scalpel cutting through whatever lingering illusions I might have had about forgiveness. She tried to interrupt, but I wouldn't allow it. She had no right to speak over me anymore. I made it clear to her that she couldn't rewrite history, not just because it was convenient for her now, but because it was the truth, something she could no longer ignore. You didn't need me then, I said coldly. And you don't need me now. I mean nothing to you, and that's fine. She hesitated, and then her voice cracked with desperation, her words coming out in quick, broken bursts. Dylan, don't you really despise us so much that you would let us suffer? We're your parents. Blood is thicker than anything, any relationship, any bond. Please. I couldn't help it. I laughed, but it wasn't a real laugh. It wasn't even a chuckle. It was hollow, bitter. A sound that didn't even seem to come from me. Blood only matters when it's convenient for you, doesn't it? I spat out. When you need someone to clean up the mess you've made, suddenly I'm family. But when I needed you, I was discarded. When I was left with nothing, you turned your backs on me. So spare me the lectures about blood. She gasped on the other end of the line, her sobs echoing through the phone. But I wasn't done. The words I had been holding in for years rushed to the surface. I'm just a simple human, I said, my voice cutting through the silence. I'm incapable of understanding divine designs. If this is part of the plan, then who am I to interfere? Should I accept it just like you expected me to accept being cast out? Just like you expected me to forgive everything you did? Her sobs turned into pleading, frantic words. Please, Dylan. Please. I regret it. We regret it. We've learned our lesson. Don't you see? We've changed. I didn't hesitate. Your regret doesn't mean anything to me. Your repentance is between you and your faith. It's not for me to bear. I'm not your savior. I'm not your second chance. I'm just someone who had to survive on his own after you tore everything apart. There was a long pause. I could hear her breathing heavily, the sound of her tears breaking through. She started to mention the past, the times we had together, trying to evoke memories of my childhood, the good times we shared. I loved you then, she said softly, her voice quivering with emotion. I love you now. I always have, Dylan. Love isn't something you can turn on and off like a faucet, I said flatly. It doesn't work that way. And love is not what you showed me when you kicked me out of your home, when you took everything I had, my money, my future, and called it divine will. Now that you guys are sinking fast, accept it as God's divine will. Her sobs grew louder, more desperate, but I remained unmoved. I had spent too many nights crying alone, too many days wondering if I would ever feel whole again. Her tears couldn't reach me now. They couldn't undo what was already done. I made it clear that I owed them nothing, not my time, not my money, not even my compassion. The decisions you made have consequences, I told her, my voice firm, devoid of any emotion. And it's not my responsibility to protect you now. You're finally facing the effects of your actions. There was a brief pause before I added, maybe you should turn to Ben. After all, he's the one you chose over me. He's the one you trusted to be your family. If anyone should be helping you now, it's him. She tried to argue, tried to convince me to reconsider, but her words were broken by her sobs. She begged me not to hang up, but I was already done. I wish you peace in your faith, I said, my voice distant, void of any warmth. The same faith that was used as an instrument to destroy me. And with that, I ended the call. My hands were shaking, not with regret. No, this was something else. A deep simmering anger, the kind that coils in your gut and stays there long after the fire dies down. I stared at the phone for a long time, my reflection ghostly in the black screen. For a brief, flickering moment, I thought about the child, the innocent one she had dangled in front of me like a carrot on a stick. A pang of guilt twisted somewhere inside me, but then it vanished, swallowed whole by the truth I had learned the hard way. That child was not my responsibility. He was not my problem. I wasn't the one who dragged him into a world of chaos and instability. That was on them. My brother, his wife, my parents. They made their choices. They wrecked their lives with their own decisions, and now they were desperate to pin the blame on someone else, to find someone to save them. But that person was never going to be me. 15 days had passed since the call with Christine. The storm had settled, but a strange emptiness had taken its place. I thought I was done with it all. Done with them. But life has a way of tossing in one last curveball when you least expect it. The phone rang around mid-morning. I almost didn't answer. It was a number I didn't recognize, and I wasn't in the mood for spam or another half-hearted plea. But something told me to pick up. Hello? I said cautiously. Dylan, this is Pastor Samuel. I'm not sure if you remember me. The name echoed distantly in my mind like a half-forgotten melody. Pastor Samuel, the youth pastor with the soft voice and tired eyes. I hadn't seen him since I was maybe 17. Church had always been mandatory in our house, but it never felt like a place of peace. More like a place where control was cloaked in scripture. I vaguely remember you, I admitted, guarded. I understand it's been a long time. His tone wasn't pushy, it wasn't judgmental, just calm. I was calling because I recently spoke with your parents. They came to the church very distressed. They asked for guidance. Your name came up. I let out a soft scoff. Of course it did. I'm not here to pressure you, he said quickly, almost anticipating my reaction. I'm not taking sides. I just wanted to understand. I wanted to hear your side of the story if that's something you're open to. I said nothing for a second, my eyes drifting to the window. The late afternoon light painted shadows across the floor. He continued, Dylan, I won't pretend to know what you've been through, but I want to give you the space to speak. Not as a pastor, and not as someone with an agenda, just as someone who's willing to listen. It caught me off guard, the sincerity in his voice. For years, every conversation with anyone tied to my family had come laced with moral ultimatums or emotional blackmail. But Pastor Samuel sounded different. I'll talk, I said slowly, but on my terms. Of course, he replied immediately. This isn't going to be a sob story, I said. And it sure as hell isn't a setup for a reunion scene where everyone hugs and cries and forgets what really happened. If you're here to suggest reconciliation, you need to hear everything first. The whole thing. I'm here to listen, he said gently. No interruptions. No spin. Just you. I took a breath, my fingers tightening around the phone. I leaned back in my chair and looked up at the ceiling, at the cracks that reminded me of how much time had passed. All right, I said. Let me tell you what happened. Let me tell you what they did and why I walked away. My voice was calm at first, like the opening lines of a story long buried. And then, slowly, piece by piece, I began to recount the events that led to my arrangement. I laid it all out for Pastor Samuel like a case study, as if I were describing someone else's trauma and not my own. Maybe it was easier that way to detach. I walked him through the betrayal, the years of silence, in the cold way my family discarded me as if I were an obstacle to their perfect little rearranged life. He didn't interrupt. Just soft sounds on the other end of the line, small acknowledgments, a gentle MMM here, a quiet I see there. No attempts to correct me, no scripture, no what would Jesus do? Just silence. And a space for me to speak freely. Maybe, for the first time in years, I told him how I'd rebuilt my life on my own terms, how the anger had shaped me but didn't define me, how I found peace not through forgiveness, but through distance. I told him about the call from Christine, and how all their recent outreach felt more like manipulation than reconciliation. A desperate grasp, not genuine regret. When I finished, there was a pause. Long. I could hear the faint static on the line, the sound of someone trying to find the right words, choosing them carefully. Then, finally, Pastor Samuel spoke, and there was something in his voice I hadn't expected, sincerity. I deeply regret everything you went through, Dylan, he said, his voice low and filled with something real. No one should have to experience that kind of injustice, especially not from their own family. There was no sermon in his tone, no paternal correction, just compassion. I have to admit, he continued, I didn't understand the full scope of what happened. Your parents, they gave me their version, a very different version. I closed my eyes, unsurprised. Of course they did. He sighed. I came into this call thinking I might encourage you to consider forgiveness, that maybe it was time to let go of the past. But now I see that it's not that simple. What you went through wasn't just a misunderstanding or a family argument. It was abandonment. It was betrayal. My throat tightened unexpectedly. If forgiveness ever comes, Pastor Samuel said softly, it has to be on your terms, in your own time. And if that day never comes, that's okay too. You have the right to protect your peace. I didn't respond immediately. I just sat there, staring at the cracks in my ceiling again. Something about hearing those words from him, from a man of the same institution that had been used to shame and control me, it shook something loose. It was strange, surreal. Like someone had opened a window in a room I'd sealed shut years ago. And in that moment, I realized something I hadn't noticed before. A weight I'd carried for years, tucked so deep it had become part of me, had suddenly lifted, albeit only partially. I appreciate you hearing me out, Pastor, I said, my voice quieter now, but still firm. But I want to be honest with you, I have no intention of reconciling with my family. Not now. Probably not ever. I understand, he replied gently. I don't believe this is about remorse, I continued. Their recent efforts, they don't feel genuine. They feel like manipulation. Like they're trying to drag me back into the same cycle that broke me in the first place. I hear you, he said. I've spent too long patching myself up, trying to build something solid out of the wreckage they left. I'm not going to risk that progress because they suddenly feel regret, or whatever they're calling it this week. You have every right to protect yourself, Pastor Samuel said, and I want you to know I respect your decision. Truly, I'm not here to pressure you. Healing is a deeply personal process. No one, especially not me, has the authority to tell you how or when to begin that journey. There was a brief silence, the kind that isn't uncomfortable, just reflective. Then, he added, I will continue to pray for you, Dylan. Not in the superficial, performative way that maybe you've seen before, but sincerely, with the hope that, in whatever form it takes, peace will find you. I let those words hang in the air a moment. They didn't feel hollow. They didn't sting like the passive-aggressive platitudes I'd grown up hearing in Sunday school or around the dinner table. They felt earnest, and I appreciated it. Weeks later, I received a message from my cousin. The message had a link, and it led to a local news blog. Not the most reputable source, but there it was, an article detailing a small-town crypto fraud scheme. The kind of scam that preyed on the hopeful and the desperate. And in the middle of the story, almost casually mentioned, was my brother's name. He had enthusiastically promoted a startup that promised high returns for early investors. Turns out it was nothing more than smoke and mirrors, typical pyramid scheme nonsense dressed up in digital jargon. The money was gone, all of it. According to the article, several people lost their savings, among the victims, my parents. I stared at the screen for a long time, not blinking, not breathing. I remembered my mother's voice on the phone, how desperate she sounded, begging me to reconsider, how she said they were about to lose everything. At the time, I thought it was just theatrics, guilt tactics. I didn't think it was real, but it was. I found out through quiet online digging that they lost the house, the one I grew up in, the one they kicked me out of to make room for him. They sold it at a loss when the debt became unbearable. The nursery they built in my old bedroom, gone. The living room, where they used to lecture me about forgiveness and family loyalty, gone. Now, months later, they were living in a rented apartment above a strip mall on the east end of town. One bedroom, thin walls, cheap blinds. I went there once. Didn't knock. Just watched from across the street. It didn't even look like them anymore. I learned my father was working at a 24-hour diner off Route 9, slinging eggs and sausage for minimum wage. I drove by once, late at night. I parked in the lot and watched him through the fogged-up glass window. He looked tired, smaller, not the booming authoritarian man I remembered. Just an old guy in a greased apron, limping between tables, wiping them down with a damp cloth. My mother was there too, behind the counter, punching keys on the register and smiling at customers who didn't know who she used to be. Funny how life flips the script. My brother? Divorced. Turns out, his wife, the one they threw everything away for, left him a few months after the fraud came to light. Packed up and moved in with someone else. Someone who could give her stability, I guess. Someone who hadn't torched his entire family in pursuit of fast money and fake dreams. They say karma doesn't need an address, but sometimes it parks right outside yours and waits. I didn't feel joy, exactly, just clarity. Everything they tried to hide, deny, or justify had finally caught up to them. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like the broken one. I was the one who got out. And maybe that was the divine plan after all. Days passed, and the weight of it all began to sink in. I felt like I had been on the outside of my family's life for so long that nothing could pierce the armor I'd built around myself. But as time went on, I realized something. That armor, however thick, however protective, had become a prison. For years, I had told myself that I had made the right decision by cutting them off. But now, looking at how everything had unraveled for them, I couldn't deny that a small part of me still longed for the family I once knew. I tried to suppress it. I had rebuilt my life without them. I was living on my own terms, finally free of their expectations, their control, and their manipulation. I had a decent job at a small tech company. I rented an apartment, modest but mine. The friends I had made in the years since had become my new family. They were loyal. They didn't betray me. They didn't ask me to forgive the unforgivable. And yet, despite all the new people in my life, the silence still felt like a heavy cloak that wrapped itself around me. Every time I closed my eyes, I thought of the home I once had. I thought of the life I had dreamed of with Emily. I thought of the love we once shared, And then I thought of how it all collapsed. The guilt had tried to creep back in. The sense of responsibility. That voice inside my head telling me that maybe, just maybe, I should have tried harder to make things work. But when I dug deeper, I realized that I was not the one who had broken everything. It wasn't my fault. I had been betrayed, and nothing I did or didn't do could change that fact. There was something freeing in that realization. The truth, painful as it was liberating. My family had made their choices. They had chosen their path. I couldn't keep carrying their mistakes, their failures, their disappointments. That wasn't my burden to bear. Still, the ache was there, like a dull throb in my chest. I had walked away from them, and I had done so because I knew it was the right thing. But I couldn't help but wonder what it would have been like had I stayed, fought, tried to fix the pieces that were shattered beyond repair. Would they have listened? Would they have changed? A few months later, my curiosity got the best of me. I did some digging, just a little, just enough to find out how they were doing. My brother had lost everything. His marriage, his home, his status. He was alone now, truly alone. I thought of the promises he made, the trust we had shared, and the years we had spent growing up together. All of it was gone, and in its place was an emptiness I didn't know how to feel about. As for my parents, they were barely surviving. My mother's coldness had melted, and I saw the truth in her eyes when I looked at her now. She had become someone unrecognizable. The strength she once exuded had withered away. My father, once the man of authority, was now just a shadow of himself. They had been humbled, broken, and in the end, they were no different from the people they had scorned, the ones they used to look down on. But none of that brought me peace. There was no comfort in knowing their suffering. If anything, it was a stark reminder of how far everything had fallen. I had walked away because I needed to protect myself. But the price of that protection had been higher than I ever imagined. I realized I had no desire to go back to them. There was no way to turn back the clock, no way to repair the damage that had been done. I had cut myself free, and now I had to live with the consequences. Maybe, just maybe, I could find my own way to heal, to rebuild from the wreckage of the past. The truth was, forgiveness wasn't always about reconciling with the people who hurt you. Sometimes, it was about learning to forgive yourself. And that was what I was working on now, letting go of the anger, the resentment, the need for validation from them. I wasn't the broken one anymore. I was whole again in my own way. It was a cold evening when I received another call from my mother. She had left a voicemail. Her voice trembled, and for a moment, I wondered if I should listen. But I didn't. I wasn't ready. I wasn't sure I ever would be. Instead, I sat there with my thoughts, the silence in my apartment heavy but strangely comforting. In the stillness, I felt something shift. Maybe it was the fact that I had finally accepted the past, the betrayal, the brokenness. Maybe it was the realization that the only person who could change my life now was me. I had learned the hard way that family wasn't always the people who shared your blood. Sometimes, family was the people who showed up when you needed them most. The people who didn't let you go, the ones who accepted you, flaws and all, and didn't ask you to forgive the unforgivable. I wasn't sure what my future held. I wasn't sure if I would ever speak to my family again. But in that moment, I knew I was okay. For the first time in a long time, I was at peace with myself. And that was enough. Thanks for watching. Can true healing happen without reconciliation, or is closure necessary? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Two attractive women were dining on the cafe's veranda, attracting male glances from passersby, but the friends were too busy talking to each other to pay attention to them. How long has it been? Clara asked, a tall brunette. It seems like I haven't seen you for ages. The second woman was a redhead, a couple of years younger than Clara. I know, replied Sophia. I feel bad about it, but between law school and family life, it's been tough to find time for anything else. How are your studies going at the law school? You must be close to finishing your JD. Yes, almost everything's ready. We have winter recess next month, and then only a few weeks of classes before I get my diploma. I've already submitted my thesis, so I don't have to worry about that. Even better, it looks like I'll be exempt from all exams. That's great. Congratulations, Clara. Do you have a job lined up? No. I've been really busy the last 3 years, so I'm planning to take a short break before entering the workforce. I want to relax and have some fun before getting back to work. But enough about me. How are you doing? Is there a special man in your life? I'm doing fine, but still searching for the right guy. Sophia gave her friend a assessing look. With your looks, I wouldn't rush to settle down. I bet you could date different men every night if you wanted. Clara gave Sophia a sarcastic smile. Believe me, Sophia, living alone nowadays isn't all it's cracked up to be. To find one decent guy, you have to meet dozens of jerks, and frankly, it gets boring. Honestly, I'm a little jealous of you, being happily married to such a wonderful man like Jacob. Speaking of Jacob, how's your handsome husband doing? I think he's fine. Clara's smile faded. Oh, I think I just heard a discouraging note. What's wrong? Isn't everything good between you? Sophia shook her head. It's not that we have problems. It's just that Jacob is so busy with his own affairs that we have little time together. And even when we do, we don't have much money to spend on entertainment. Well, he's spending all that time building his company's future for both of you. I imagine law school isn't cheap. I know, and I appreciate it. But sometimes I just want to go out and have fun like I used to. All my classmates talk about is parties and meeting people at clubs. Meanwhile, I'm sitting at home watching reruns on TV. Clara looked shrewdly at her friend. Is there anyone at school in particular you'd like to go to a party with? Sophia laughed. You always know me too well. Actually, there is one freshman, Liam. He's very nice. She blushed. He definitely likes me, too. Every time we're together, he goes out of his way to say something really nice about how I look and how well I'm doing. Clara shook her head. I don't think Jacob will be happy to hear about this. It's just harmless flirting. It doesn't mean anything. But you're right, Jacob is pretty old-fashioned about this kind of thing, so I'm not going to tell him. Sophia shifted in her chair. I can't help but remember how things were before I got married. It was so much fun to hang out and meet different guys. I miss that. You need to be careful, friend. You have a good husband, and you shouldn't risk losing him. You know Jacob won't tolerate it if he catches you fooling around. And if you ever did, I bet there are plenty of other women who would be happy to comfort him afterward. I know, and honestly, I want to spend my life with him, to start a family and all that. I just wanted a little fun before things get serious. She lowered her voice and leaned in again. Speaking of that guy I told you about yesterday, he asked me to go to California with him for winter break. If there was a way to do it without Jacob finding out, I'd probably agree. She leaned back and laughed dismissively. But it's just a fantasy. It will never happen. Clara sat back and looked at Sophia for a long moment. Finally, she nodded as if she had made a decision. Don't be so sure. I know how you can do this and get away with it. Sophia sighed, half disbelief, half delight. Are you kidding? How can you be sure? Do you really want to risk your marriage just for a week-long trip? If I could be sure Jacob would never find out, then why not? But you're just teasing me, Clara. There's no way I could get away with something like that. It's simple, Clara began, counting off each step on her fingers. First, you create a new email account under some anonymous name, something like Trusted Friend. Then, use this account to send Jacob an anonymous letter warning him that his wife is having an affair. What? Tell him I'm having an affair? That's crazy. Sophia interrupted. No, more precisely, you write that Sophia is having an affair with someone Jacob doesn't know and can't easily verify. What good would that do? It'll take his attention away from your law school crush. Yes, but it will make Jacob suspicious of me. Exactly. But when he can't find the guy you're supposed to be having an affair with, he'll have no choice but to confront you and demand to know what's going on. But I don't want him to suspect me. No, you won't want him to. When he confronts you, you'll be angry at him for not trusting you. In fact, you'll call a timeout on your marriage. Sophia, doesn't your mother live in California? Yes. You tell Jacob that you're going to California for winter break to visit your mom and figure out what to do with your marriage. While he's here in town desperately searching for the mystery man, you're in California with Liam having your little fling. How will I explain all this to my mother? You shouldn't. In fact, you shouldn't even see her while you're there. But if Jacob calls her, tell him not to. Make it clear you need a complete break to sort things out. Warn him that if he tries, you might not come home at all. Sophia stared at Clara for a moment, contemplating. Finally, her face brightened. I can see how this could work. But what happens when I come back? It's simple. By then, Jacob will miss you like crazy. Since he can't find the supposed mystery man, he'll think someone is playing a prank on him. He'll feel guilty and beg you to forgive him for not trusting you. You'll forgive him, and everything will be fine. You'll have fun, and then you and Jacob will be closer than ever. What about the mystery man I'm supposed to be having an affair with? Maybe I should just make up a name. You can, but I think it's more believable if it's a real person, someone you can't have an affair with, like someone very old or living far away or dead. That way, if Jacob tracks him down, you're safe. I think I know the perfect guy. I had a creepy professor during my first year of law school. He must have left town because I never saw him again. How do you like that? Perfect. Sophia exclaimed. Clara smiled. Sophia reached across the table and squeezed her friend's hand. You're the best, Clara. I'm so excited. I really think this will work. Then she hugged herself and trembled slightly. I can't wait to tell Liam. Jacob returned to his office and sat in his second-hand swivel chair, rubbing his forehead worriedly. If these parts don't arrive soon, we'll miss the deadline for prototype delivery. After the foreman left, Jacob tried to come up with a backup plan. Then his email dinged. He quickly checked his inbox, hoping for good news. But when he saw the subject was about his wife, he almost deleted it. Curiosity got the better of him, and he opened the message. I hate to tell you this, but Clara is having a romance with Professor Ellsworth. Just thought you should know. Trusted friend. What the hell? Jacob reread the message, unable to comprehend the terrible words. What nonsense. This can't be true. Clara wouldn't cheat on me. Someone must be trying to stir trouble between us. But who? And why? He started to delete the message but hesitated. That's the last thing I need right now. It must be a mistake. A misunderstanding. But his practical side wouldn't let him ignore it. Damn it. Damn it. Of course, it can't be true. Angrily, he hit reply. Who are you? Why are you making such a terrible accusation? What evidence do you have? He pressed send and stared at the screen in impotent rage. This wouldn't lead to anything good. It was unknown if or when the sender would answer, and there was no way to track them. Jacob started searching for Professor Ellsworth. The business school website showed no such staff. He expanded his search across the university. No luck. Frustrated, he looked at other nearby schools, but found nothing. This is madness, he muttered. Did my trusted friend just make up a name? He tried a Google search. 5 results appeared, 2 female and none local. I knew it was fake. Someone's trying to prank me or drive me crazy. Still, he couldn't bring himself to delete the letter. Now that it had been sent, a seed of doubt grew in his mind. What if she's having an affair? I didn't see any signs, but that doesn't mean anything. I was so busy at work I hardly spent time with her. What if she was upset because she felt ignored? I remember times she wanted to go out, and I said no. But damn, I'm working almost 60 hours a week trying to get the business going. Doesn't she understand? I'm doing this for us. And to be honest, they really couldn't afford anything extravagant. Her law school tuition kept rising, and he was pouring everything left into speeding up the process. Still, he guessed he'd neglected her feelings. Feeling guilty, he checked his calendar for the last time they'd spent together. After scrolling through 3 months with nothing, he stopped. Damn, damn, damn. But alongside guilt came anger. I may not have given Clara all the attention she wanted, but that doesn't give her the right to cheat. We discussed the sacrifices when we started this business. She agreed 100%. She hardly has the right to complain now. His foreman poked his head in. Hey Jacob, good news. The parts we need just arrived. God bless, Jacob said. Okay, let's unpack and get them to the workshop ASAP. When the foreman left, Jacob took a deep breath. One crisis averted. He smiled. I think I can spend more time taking care of my wife. After searching the internet fruitlessly, he sat back and thought. If Clara is having an affair, it has to be with someone from the university. Maybe my trusted friend got the name wrong or the university hasn't updated their website. He returned to the university site and called Human Resources. Is Professor Ellsworth on faculty? Which faculty? The secretary asked. I think the law school, but I'm not sure. There was a pause, then the reply. I'm sorry, sir, but we don't have a Professor Ellsworth in the law school. What about other faculties? Please wait. After a longer wait, the secretary's tone changed. Sir, there is no Professor Ellsworth at the university. A thought struck him. Maybe he was on staff a year or 2 ago? I can only confirm current staff, sir. University policy. Is there anything else I can help with? No, you did your best. He tried the dean's office but learned nothing new. Jacob's head was throbbing. I need a good drink, he muttered and hung up. But the thought gave him an idea. He called Clara. Hey, can you meet me after work at Marco's for a drink? I have a problem and need your advice. No, I don't want to talk on the phone. Great. See you there at 6. Before leaving, he checked his email. No new messages from trusted friend. At Marco's, Jacob found Clara in a quiet corner with a glass of white wine and his favorite beer. He kissed her cheek. Thanks for coming. I really needed to talk. She sipped wine and looked at him long. Okay, What's going on? Business troubles? He stared at his mug. Do you know Professor Ellsworth from the university? She shook her head, puzzled. No, never heard of him. He sighed and handed her the email printout. She scanned it, sighed, reread it, then looked at him sympathetically. Per Jacob. No wonder you didn't want to talk on the phone. What do you think? I don't know what to think, Clara. I can't believe it's true, but I can't bury my head in the sand either. I spent all day trying to track down this Ellsworth, but hit a dead end. I don't know what to do. I can't afford a private detective, and I don't have time to play one myself. That's why I wanted to talk to you. You've been a good friend to me and Clara for years. What do you think? Clara took another sip and squeezed his hand. What you're really asking is if I think she's having an affair. I can't give you absolute certainty. I haven't seen or heard anything to make me think she's unfaithful, but I haven't seen her much either. Her face twisted in annoyance, and she hurried on. You know people like to stir things up. It could be that, or maybe business enemies trying to distract you. There might be other scenarios I haven't thought of. But you can't ignore this and hope it goes away. You believe in marital fidelity, and any hint of broken trust will eat at you. If you don't deal with this, doubt will kill your relationship with Clara as surely as a romance. Jacob looked haunted. I understand you're right, Clara. But what can I do? In my opinion, you should show her the letter. She needs to know someone accused her and deserves a chance to explain. After all, if someone accused you, you'd want to know, wouldn't you? He nodded silently. You're right. If I don't share this, it'll affect how I behave, and it might tear us apart, just as surely as if she really cheated. He stood and hugged Clara. Thanks for helping me think it through. I don't know what I'd do without you. You both mean a lot to me. If I can help, just ask. He nodded gratefully and headed for the door. Clara watched him leave. When Jacob returned home, Clara was already waiting. Where have you been? I tried calling. He ignored the question, took her hand, and led her to the sofa. I have to show you something that really confused me. She sat, nervous. He handed her the printout. I got this by email today. Can you tell me anything about it? She read quickly, then jumped up, screaming. Do you think I'm cheating? I don't believe it. You got an accusation from some anonymous, trusted friend, and you're ready to accuse me? No, honey, I don't blame you. If you don't blame me, why did you show me these lies? She snatched the printout, crumpled it, and threw it at him. You might as well stab me. This hurts so much. You trust a coward who won't even sign his name more than your own wife. She grabbed her purse and headed for the door. I can't even look at you. I'm leaving. I don't know when I'll be back. With those words, she slammed the door. Oh, damn. He groaned, sinking back onto the sofa, clasping his head. His first thoughts were defensive. Why was she so upset? She didn't even let me finish. I didn't accuse her. I just showed her what someone else wrote. But I knew the answer before I finished. If Clara had gotten that note, I'd probably have exploded, too. But what could I do? Act like everything's fine. Clara was right. I can't ignore the letter. It wouldn't be fair to either of us. Though he spent the evening turning over the situation in his mind, he was no closer to knowing what to do. He knew he and Clara needed to talk but couldn't decide what to say. All he knew was he wanted to bring his wife home to try to mend the relationship. Emotionally exhausted, he felt himself getting tired but was determined to stay up until Clara returned. After another hour, he lay down and soon fell asleep. Sometime after midnight, the sound of the door opening woke him. Clara walked into the living room, hands on hips. Clara, we really need to. I don't want to talk now, she interrupted sharply. You can sleep on the couch. We'll talk in the morning. Without waiting for an answer, she turned and headed to their bedroom. Hearing the door slam, he groaned and lay back on the couch, hoping to fall asleep again. It took a long time. Jacob usually woke early to get to the office before anyone else, but even though his body clock woke him, he felt obligated to wait for Clara so they could talk. He made coffee and sat at his laptop to read the news. Almost 8, Clara entered the kitchen dragging a suitcase. Where are you going? Jacob asked. I thought we were going to talk. Before he finished, she raised a hand. It's a terrible shock, Jacob. This calls into question our whole marriage. Winter break starts tomorrow. I'm going to California to visit my mother. She pierced him with an angry look. I plan to spend the whole week there and return to classes next Tuesday. While I'm gone, I don't want to hear from you. I need this time for myself. Don't call me. Don't call my mother. Don't call her house. Do you understand? He nodded helplessly. I'm serious, Jacob. If you try to call, I might not come back at all. Understood, he nodded again. Okay, she said. walking to her car with suitcase in tow. After she left, Jacob sat in shock for several minutes, then went to shave and change. He gloomily drove to work. At the office, good news awaited. His foreman took charge of distributing the missing parts and testing proceeded smoothly. At least the business won't crash and burn today. Unlike my marriage, Jacob muttered bitterly. In the afternoon, he worked on a spreadsheet when the phone rang. He answered to hear Clara's voice. I was worried and wanted to know how you're doing. How did it go last night with Clara? It's a long, sad story, he said dejectedly. That doesn't sound good. Maybe we can meet for a drink and talk. That'd be great. Same place? Okay. Before leaving, he checked his email, still nothing from trusted friend. At the bar, Clara immediately noticed the dark circles under his eyes. Jacob, looks like you didn't get much sleep. What happened? He took a long sip of his beer and began to recount the confrontation and Clara's departure. Clara looked at him with sadness and guilt. Oh, Jacob, I feel terrible. You followed my advice, and it turned out wrong. No, Clara. I thought about it a lot, and I'm convinced it was the only thing I could do. I didn't expect Clara to react violently, but I couldn't keep the letter and pretend nothing happened. I hope she cools down, and we can talk when she comes back. You say that nicely, Jacob, but I still feel guilty. What will you do for the rest of the week? I don't know. If Clara and I don't talk, I don't see how to move forward. Maybe I'll wait a few days then try calling her. No, Jacob, that's the one thing you shouldn't do. She already thinks you don't trust her. If you call her after she told you not to, you'll prove her right. I guess I understand, but I feel helpless. The only thing you can do while she's gone is try to figure out who this Professor Ellsworth is. That makes sense. Maybe he can fill in the blanks. Over the next days, Jacob tried to unravel the mystery, but failed. He brainstormed. Maybe I can't find him because he's a graduate, not a teacher. I'm an alumnus too. Maybe alumni relations can help. When he called and identified himself as a graduate, he was transferred to development. The man asked for Jacob's address, phone, and email, then how much he wanted to contribute to the alumni fund. No, I'm not calling to donate. I'm trying to find Professor Ellsworth. I think he might be a graduate. The man searched several databases. Sorry, sir, we've never had a graduate by that name. What about graduate schools? I checked those too. Maybe he studied for a year or two, but dropped out or transferred. The man lost interest. I'm afraid I can't help. Our database only has graduates. Anything else? No, thanks. Jacob hung up, cursing. Damn it. I only guaranteed I'll be invited to the next alumni fundraiser. The next day, he took an hour off to visit the law school. It was almost empty winter break, he cursed himself. Still, some people were around. He walked from office to office asking about Professor Ellsworth. Finally, the assistant dean met him. Sir, I'm sorry, but you have to leave. If you don't comply, we'll call campus security. Jacob apologized and hurried away, more upset than ever. Back at his desk, he dropped his head into his hands. What should I do now? His work phone rang. An unfamiliar voice asked, Are you the one looking for Professor Ellsworth? Yes, Jacob said hesitantly. I'm Dr. Avery Mayfair of the law school faculty. I may be able to help, but why are you looking for him? Jacob briefly explained. The caller made a contemptuous sound. I overheard your questions at school today, and your way of asking made me wonder if something's going on. Anyway, I can reassure you. 2 years ago, Ellsworth was an adjunct professor here. He was good, but enrollment was too low. His course was canceled, and his contract wasn't renewed. I see, said Jacob. Also, at the start of this academic year, I got a message from Ellsworth. He said he found a job at Redwood State University in Oregon. Is he in Oregon? Jacob asked, surprised. Yes, and he told me he recently married his longtime partner, Harold. So Ellsworth is out of the picture. Exactly. Thanks for calling. I don't understand why someone sent that letter, but I'm sure it was a lie. I hope to calm you. May I ask one more thing? Sure. Why did you call me? I'm a stranger. My wife left me years ago for another man. I sympathize with anyone in your situation. Fortunately, your warning was false. But I have strong feelings about anyone who interferes in a marriage. If this letter had been true, I wouldn't hesitate to tell you. Thank you, doctor. I appreciate your help. That evening, Jacob called Clara. I don't know who's trying to ruin my marriage, but I'm sure Clara isn't having an affair with Ellsworth. Are you sure you trust Dr. Mayfair? Absolutely. After our call, I checked. He's an elderly, well-respected faculty member. I also verified Ellsworth's presence at Redwood State. That's great. You must be relieved. Yes. But now I wonder what to tell Clara when she comes home. That's easy. Tell her you never doubted her. You knew about Ellsworth and looked him up as soon as you got the letter. Since she reacted strongly, you didn't get to tell her. If you play it right, she'll apologize. I'm not sure. Everything wasn't like that. Clara smiled. Come on, Jacob. Is it really so bad to stretch the truth a little? On Sunday, before returning to town, Clara surprised Clara with a call. Hey, I wanted to check on Jacob before I get home. I'm nervous about what I'll find. One thing's for sure. You owe me a huge debt for everything I did while you were busy with your little affair. With some luck, you'll get back together better than ever. She described the week, ending with Jacob learning about Ellsworth's whereabouts. If you play your cards right, Jacob will apologize, you'll apologize, and everything will go back to normal. There was a pause. What if I don't want things to go back to normal? I don't understand, Clara. What do you mean? Just last week, I had an explosion. Liam is funny and a fantastic lover. I haven't felt that pleasure in years. I'm not ready for my little adventure to end. I want to keep seeing him until the semester ends. Stop, Clara. You're already taking a big risk by going with him for a week. If you keep the romance here, you're upping the odds. Maybe, but the plan worked perfectly. I bet you can help me figure out how to do it again. Okay, but understand, you'll jeopardize your marriage. Jacob's a good man, hardworking, loyal, a true family man. Men like him don't come every day. Are you sure you want to risk it all for a little fun? Clara chuckled. You turn me on with I have a plan. Okay, here's what you do. Do you still have that anonymous email account? Sure. You told me to keep it active. Good. You send another letter from the same account, but this time to yourself, accusing Jacob of having an affair with you. What? That's not true, and Jacob knows it. How does this help? Simple. The first letter accused you of cheating. Jacob proved it wasn't with Ellsworth, but may still doubt your fidelity. After the second letter, he'll have no doubts. He knows you're innocent of Ellsworth, and now the trusted friend is obviously lying. He'll have no reason to suspect you anymore. You can get away with almost anything without arousing suspicion. There was silence. Clara, you're a genius. You just gave me a hall pass for the semester. There are two more things. First, make sure Jacob tells me about the second letter. Why? So I can reinforce the idea you're trustworthy and the trusted friend is a liar. That's good. He cares about me and will listen to you. After you send the message to yourself, log out of the trusted friend account. What if Jacob finds it? You should sign out of all your email accounts when not using them. You don't want him finding love notes from Liam. I warned Liam never to email me, but still, good advice. That evening, Jacob was alarmed to find Clara crying. Things had been going well since she returned from California, so her upset face shocked him. What's wrong? She handed him a copy of the letter. Son of a, he swore after reading. That's a lie, isn't it? Of course. I know you'd never cheat. Just as I wouldn't. Even if you did, it wouldn't be with Clara. Clara's a good friend to both of us. She'd never do that. Damn. Someone's still trying to cause trouble, and I don't know who or why. There must be a way to track these things. He looked at her. Are you going to tell Clara? Should I? Yes, whether you like it or not. She's involved now. It'd be unfair not to tell her. The next morning, Jacob called Clara. How are the lovebirds? We're fine, but there's something new. Can we meet after work? I plan to work from home after lunch. Can you come over? Okay. I'll be there between 6:30 and 7. At Clara's apartment, Jacob immediately noticed the solemn look on her face. What's wrong? I was worried when you called. He handed her the letter. After reading it, she looked despairing. But it's funny. We don't have an affair. I'd never do that. I hope she knows. She does. She told me herself. Clara shook her head. I think someone's trying to stir trouble between us. First the letter about Ellsworth, now this. I think I have an enemy. Maybe a business competitor. I don't know. I'm glad you told me, Jacob. You're always caring. But I don't know what we can do unless this person slips up. The police won't help. I agree, Clara. It's frustrating. I just want whoever it is to leave us alone. How's Clara handling it? She's upset. When I came home, she was in tears. No wonder, especially after the first letter. Clara's fragile now. Between all this and finishing school, she's a bundle of nerves. You have to take care of her. Should we block all mail from that account? That might be a mistake. If he sends more, you'll want to know. How do I protect Clara? If you get another letter, don't tell her right away. Check her email on your laptop regularly. If she gets another, forward it before she sees it, so you don't interfere. That's a good idea. He stood. Sorry you had to be dragged into this. If that's an apology, I don't need one. You're dear to me, and I'll help however I can. He smiled gratefully. I'd better go home to see how Clara is. He started to leave, then turned and hugged Clara, kissing her cheek. Thanks for being such a good friend. Having you through all this means a lot. When Jacob returned, Clara was in a much better mood. The next morning, she was cheerful and got up early to have breakfast with him. This is a real holiday. I don't see you that often. Before I go, I wanted to say I love you. She kissed him. By the way, she added, I'm going to a lecture on campus tonight. A few girls and I will grab dinner after, so I'll probably get home late. Of course, Clara. That's fine. There are leftovers in the fridge if you want a snack. Thanks, darling. I'll probably come home after school to drop off my stuff and change. If we don't see each other, have a good evening. Knowing Clara wouldn't be home, Jacob stayed late at the office. Business was picking up. A big potential client liked samples of the new product. Hopefully they'll place a trial order. Something was becoming. Now I just need to find out who's playing these email games. Still thinking about the mysterious, trusted friend, he entered the house. As he went into the bedroom, he noticed Clara's laptop on the table. I don't think she needed it for the lecture. He remembered Clara's plan. I wonder if she still checks her email. He opened the laptop. The email page wasn't open, so he clicked on Gmail to see if she was logged in. A window opened asking him to select an account. He saw Clara's email, but it was logged out. As he closed Gmail, he noticed a second account under regular mail. Looking closer, he froze. The account was named Trusted Friend. What the hell? He tried to open it, but Google asked for the password. Not knowing it, he closed the tab and sank into his chair. How could she have an account with that name? I know Gmail doesn't allow duplicates. That means Clara was sending those other letters. Why would she do this? Why send me an anonymous letter accusing herself of an affair? After a moment, the answer hit him. It must have been a distraction. She wanted me to chase some gay professor in Oregon because she was having an affair with someone else. Then another thought hit like a punch. Her trip to California. When I showed her the letter, she pretended to be upset. She said she needed time away from me to visit her mother. Did she even see her mother? He quickly called his mother-in-law. After a polite minute, he said, Tell me, Clara and I were thinking of visiting next month. Will that be too soon? Too soon. I haven't seen you in ages. Please come when you can. Jacob ground his teeth in anger. Good. We'll contact you when we decide. He hung up, cursing. What a mess. I wonder where Clara actually went. More importantly, who with? He remembered the last letter Clara received. That must have been another distraction to take her mind off me while she goes out with friends. He wondered what she wore going out. He hurried back to the bedroom and sorted through her underwear. It was hard to remember everything about Clara. Almost giving up, a suspicion gripped him. He checked one more thing, a garter belt. He was absent-mindedly looking for a bra and panties, but they were gone too. Went out with girlfriends, huh? He put everything back and returned to the kitchen to think. So you love sabotage and deception. Well, two can play. When Clara returned after midnight, Jacob pretended to be asleep. She tiptoed into the bedroom and turned on the shower. He did everything not to stand and confront her. Who knew going to lectures could be so sweaty, he thought bitterly. The next morning, Jacob left early for work before Clara woke. Next to the coffee pot, he left a note. Hope you enjoyed yesterday's lecture. I had an early meeting and might be late. Don't wait up. Jacob. It was a busy day, but his meetings weren't with clients. During lunch, he shopped and then headed home to prepare. Afterward, he had 2 more meetings that took the whole afternoon. When finished, he went to dinner and a movie to kill time. Clara was asleep when he climbed into bed, trying not to wake her. The next morning, she woke to find him waiting. I thought you left hours ago. Wanted to see you. I have a flight to Detroit at noon. I'll be gone a few days. That's new. You don't travel often. When you be back? Not until Friday evening. If all goes well, I leave Saturday morning. Can you cope while I'm gone? She smiled brightly. Don't worry. I'll find things to do. Good. Just stay away from our trusted friend while I'm gone. Her face darkened. Not funny, Jacob. Sorry, not funny. He waved, grabbed his suitcase, and left. Frowning as he pulled out of the driveway, he thought, she didn't even say I love you. I bet she's planning to meet her lover again. I need a distraction to make sure it happens here, not at the airport. Jacob left the office at lunchtime and went to the university parking lot. He walked briskly toward the law school, wearing jeans and a sweatshirt, carrying a cheap backpack. Without looking up, he headed to the library reading room. The few students ignored him. Once out of sight behind a periodicals rack, he pulled out several large firecrackers with long fuses. He tossed them into a metal disposal bin. Then he propped open a nearby door with his backpack and walked out. Outside, he called campus security. "Come quickly. There's shooting at the law school." "They're still shooting?" He turned the phone toward the library as a series of fireworks exploded. He hung up and hurried to his car. Sirens wailed, people ran. Parked in his neighborhood, he watched. An hour later, he saw Clara's car pull into his driveway. Then a second car followed, and a man appeared. "In times of danger, there's no place like home," he muttered, grinning sadly. He got into his car and drove to the motel where he'd booked a room. Late that night, he drove around the neighborhood to check. The second car was still there. He returned to his room and tried to sleep. The next morning, the adulterous couple was surprised to find Jacob leaning against the stranger's car door. "Carl, this is my husband." Clara gasped. "I thought you were in Detroit." She stammered, then stopped herself. "Darling, it's not what it seems. Carl just came by to stop me. Every time you open your mouth, you lie. I don't want to hear it." He bared his teeth and gestured at them. "That's exactly what it sounds like. I know you spent the night here. I have a record of everything you said and did. So shut up and listen." He handed her a manila envelope. "I'm filing for divorce on grounds of adultery. Inside is my lawyer's info. Find a lawyer and have them contact mine. Don't try to contact me. After what you did, I won't see or talk to you." "No, honey, it was a one-time mistake. We can work it out. Stop lying. This isn't a one-time thing. You've been having fun with him for weeks. It wasn't a mistake. You planned it. I know you sent that letter as a distraction so you could spend winter break together. By the way, your mom wants to know why you haven't visited lately. I guess you were so wrapped up in that jerk, you didn't see her." He turned to Carl. "Oh, yeah, that reminds me." Jacob pulled out his phone and took photos of the stunned man. Carl growled, clenched fists, and stepped threateningly forward. Jacob calmly showed the gun handle in his jacket. "I wouldn't do that if I were you. I have no intention of ruining my life by killing you, but I'll gladly shoot you in self-defense." "Stop. Stop." Carl raised his hands and stepped back. Jacob grinned. "Looks like your boyfriend's a lover, not a fighter." His voice turned cold. "Take what you need and get out. Don't be here when I get back." "I wasn't kidding. I never want to see you again." "Jacob, please. I never wanted it to be this way." He ignored her and walked to his car. She sat on the driveway, sobbing into her hands. On the way to the office, Jacob stopped at a dumpster and threw away his phone and toy gun. "I'm glad these things look realistic," he grinned mercilessly. Back at his desk, Jacob emailed one of the photos. Minutes later, he got a call. "This is Dr. Mayfair. Did you email me a photo? Sorry for bothering you again. Do you recognize the man? I think he's Carl. Is the woman next to him your wife?" "I'm afraid not, my ex-wife. Very beautiful. I think she was in one of my classes last year. The man is Carl Mannheim, one of my dissertation students." "Good to hear, doctor. I have a score to settle with him." "So he's the serpent who stained your Garden of Eden?" "In a way, but my Eve wasn't innocent either." "Interesting. Glad I could help, even if it's not what you wanted." "Thanks, doctor. I appreciate your help. Good luck, young man. Don't lose hope. Things always work out for the better. Take it from someone who's been there." 2 months later, Jacob sat with his lawyer, annoyed. "Have you heard from Clara's lawyer? How's the divorce?" "Yes. Yesterday, I spoke with Hannah Montgomery. Today, she sent a counteroffer." "Good news." "Yes. Clara decided not to fight anymore. After hearing your recordings, Hannah convinced her not to risk a court battle." "Bad news. Now she's trying to get as much financially as possible." "Crap. She lies and deceives me, then expects me to pay. It's not fair. What does my cheating wife want?" "Usually property division, but you rent, have no pension, and little savings. Your only asset is a business share operating at a loss. She expects failure, so she only asked for alimony." "I appreciate her confidence," Jacob snapped sarcastically. "How much alimony?" "More than we offered." The lawyer handed him a sheet. Jacob gasped. "This is ridiculous. She knows I can't afford this. Paying that much means liquidating the business." "What can I say? Clara refuses to negotiate. Hannah will propose this to Judge Avery. I won't give up without a fight." "Okay. Remember, Judge Avery has absolute power. You get whatever he decides. Almost a month later, Jacob waited anxiously in court. After arguments, the judge adjourned. How do you think? Jacob whispered. No idea. Could go either way or a compromise. The judge returned, asking opposing counsel to the bench. I assume no change in financial settlement positions? No, Your Honor. Very well. Before deciding, I'd like to question Mrs. Brighton. Clara looked scared but smiled and approached. Everything will be fine, her lawyer whispered. Don't forget to address the judge as Your Honor. Jacob's lawyer whispered, usually not a good sign. Jacob watched sourly as Clara testified. Her suit was conservative but fit to show her figure. The judge watched her, shaking his head. I think we're done, the lawyer whispered. The judge read from papers, then faced Clara. Mrs. Brighton, the only issue is alimony. Your offer is significantly higher than your husband's. Is that right? Yes, Your Honor. How do you justify the amount? We ask for more due to years of marriage and starting life over. Mr. Brighton claims his only income is his company, which operates at a loss. Why do you think he can afford this? We argue he reduces income by reinvesting in the business. He could pay support by lowering investments. The audited statements show negative cash flow, Your Honor. His accountants manipulate numbers? Not fraud, Your Honor. Earnings can be deferred, investments accelerated within accepted accounting rules. He invests too much. Jacob's blood pressure rose. He knows it's false. She's trying to pressure me. The judge reviewed the summary. We focused on his investments. I see he's also invested heavily in you. If you mean my JD, Your Honor, it's true he paid tuition. I worked hard for all courses, tests, dissertation. Worked day and night the last 2 years, including summer. I just graduated. Very good, Mrs. Brighton. Thank you, Your Honor. The judge nodded. That's all. He raised glasses and looked at both. I intend to award Mrs. Brighton the full amount she requested. Jacob flinched. Clara hugged her lawyer. But it's only for 6 months. 6 months. Yes, Your Honor. Can't do that, Clara cried. I can and did, the judge said, banging the gavel. Her lawyer pulled her away as she tried to protest. Only the presence of a large bailiff convinced her to stop. Do I only pay child support 6 months? That's manageable, Jacob told his lawyer. How about that? Good. I thought we lost when the judge called her number, but he wasn't impressed by her tactics. Not many husbands behave well in divorce court. Think it's because she pleaded no contest to adultery? He shouldn't have considered that, but maybe he did. Jacob looked back at Clara arguing with her lawyer and chuckled. Well, whatever it is, I'm happy. A hand touched his shoulder. He turned to an elderly man he didn't know but found familiar. I want to introduce myself, the man said. I'm Professor Mayfair. Jacob shook his hand firmly. Professor, a pleasure to meet you. Thanks again for your help. What brings you to court? After our talk, I got interested in your case and stopped by. Also to say hello to an old friend, Judge Avery. They shook hands again. I'm glad it went well. If I can help, I will. Divorced husbands must stick together. The professor left. Jacob watched him go. He thought he saw Clara in the crowd, but she wasn't there. Later, Clara hesitantly called Sophia. Hello, Sophia. It's me, Clara. Sophia? What a surprise. I haven't heard from you since you moved to California. How are you? To be honest, tough few years. That's why I called. I needed to talk. How's work? That's part of the problem. With my JD, I thought I'd find a good job easily. But employers want experience, not degrees. Most offers are internships. Oh my God, that's rough. Where did you end up? When the money ran out, I was desperate. Took a job as an assistant for a while. Terrible. Now I'm in financial advising. Actually, that's why I called. I can analyze your finances if you want. There was a pause. Clara, I'd love to help, but my finances are stable and I'm confident about the future. I don't think I need help. It's okay. I hear that a lot. It's just hard to get a foothold. I moved in with my mom to reduce expenses. You live with your mom? What happened with Carl? Don't mention that jerk. We broke up months after moving here. Really? What happened? Terrible. Carl dropped out without his JD. His advisor rejected his thesis. He felt bitter, refused to look for work, played video games, drank, and took out his resentment on me. I had to call police. Oh, Clara, that's awful. You're lucky to be free. Now you can go out, have fun, meet new people. I remember how much I missed that when married. Nightclubs and parties need money. Sophia, I don't have much spare cash. When I go out, it's not glamorous like I thought. A friend warned me there are more creeps than good guys. She paused. Sophia said nothing, so Clara changed the subject. How about you? Dating anyone special? My situation changed a lot. I'm getting married next month. Married? Amazing. Who? You know him. It's Jacob. Jacob? You're engaged to my Jacob. You can't do that. I already did. Small civil ceremony in our backyard, then Paris honeymoon. New house, honeymoon. Jacob can't afford all that. My situation changed, and Jacob's too. The month you moved to California, he got that big order. Business took off. His product fits the auto industry perfectly. He got an offer to sell his business for a fortune. Deal closes next week. So no worries about finances. Clara stuttered. Sophia pressed on. This could have been yours, Clara. But you risked it all starting your affair. I warned you there'd be women ready to pick up the pieces if your marriage fell. But you encouraged me to help. You're exaggerating. I didn't force you. I gave you enough rope to hang yourself. I can't believe this. I bet you warned Jacob about Carl. You're smarter than that. If I told Jacob, he'd wonder how I knew. I told you not to delete your secret Gmail account and told Jacob to check it. I use Gmail a lot, so I knew he'd see. So no, Clara, I didn't tell Jacob about Liam. I arranged the dominoes to fall where I wanted. I trusted you, Sophia. I thought you were my friend. All's fair in love and war. You won't get away with this. I'll make sure Jacob knows. You schemer. He'll call off the wedding. I'm sorry, Clara, but I have to interrupt. Jacob and I have plans tonight, and I want to look good. She hung up, blocking Clara's number. You're insidious. Sophia greeted her fiancé with a kiss when he came home. Jacob kissed her back, then pulled a paper from his jacket. You won't believe who sent me a letter today, Clara. Oh, really? Sophia said casually. I almost forgot about her. She says you planned everything to separate us. Pretty wild. Can I see? He handed her the printout. She glanced at it, then smiled. Poor Clara. She could make her jealousy fantasy halfway believable with one more thing. He looked at her curiously. She should have signed it trusted friend. He laughed. Thanks for watching. What would you have done if you were in Jacob or Clara's shoes? Comment below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories. On a cold Thursday evening in March, I was driving up to the cabin I inherited. I had taken the week off to finish handling my father's estate after his passing following years of declining health. He didn't have much to leave behind aside from my grandfather's old hunting cabin tucked away in northern Ohio. Now, over 4 months later, I had finally settled his outstanding bills and was heading to the cabin around 9 a.m., hoping for a break from the heavy days I'd had. The drive up turned into a snowy journey as heavy flakes started to fall, blanketing the road with about 6 inches by the time I reached the turnoff. But as I pulled up to the property, I noticed something strange. The gate was open, the chain lock was cut, and fresh tire tracks led into the property, yet none came out. My first thought was that it must be some local thieves taking advantage of the empty cabin. I checked my phone, and surprisingly, I actually had service. I dialed 911, and the dispatcher assured me that she'd send a couple of units right away. She advised me to wait for them, suggesting that I block the gate with my car and find a safe spot. So, I pulled in, shut off the engine, and waited, thinking about how few people even knew this cabin existed. The area was mostly federal forest, deep wilderness, and not hunting season. Plus, animals like foxes, beavers, and coyotes had been trapped out decades ago. Before I could get too lost in thought, the flashing lights of the county sheriff's cars came into view down the road. I moved my car to let them through. The deputies pulled up beside me, confirming that I was the one who'd called. I explained how I'd come upon the open gate, the cut lock, and the fresh tire tracks leading into the property. I mentioned that whoever had broken in must still be there since there was no other way in or out. The 2 sheriff's cars crept down the 600 yards to the cabin, with me following close behind. Sure enough, a car was parked beside the cabin, and whoever was inside seemed oblivious to our arrival. The deputies called in their update, noting that the cabin door showed signs of forced entry. Then, just as they finished the call, a man and a woman stepped out of the cabin, struggling to carry a gun safe between them. When the deputies confronted them, the man put on a bold front, insisting they had every right to be there because the property belonged to the woman. They hadn't noticed me until I walked up, and the moment they saw me, all the confidence drained from their faces. I couldn't believe it. The intruders were none other than my former business partner and my ex-girlfriend. Allow me to introduce myself. I'm Nathan, or Nate for short, Reynolds. I'm 38, divorced, and I own and work as a service technician for a bank equipment company. My job mostly involves installing and repairing equipment like drive-through systems used in local banks and credit unions. I'm also one of the business owners. No kids of my own, but my ex-girlfriend has a young daughter, and that's part of how this story unfolds. I first met Olivia Johnson on a flight back from Chicago. I was returning home from my time in the military at the age of 27, having served 6 years as a radio repairman. During my time in service, I'd earned a degree online in electronics with a minor in computer security. I'd done 2 tours in the Middle East and was more than ready to leave the military behind. Olivia happened to be in the seat beside me on that flight, and we struck up a conversation. I learned that she was the youngest in her family, on her way back to Cleveland from a shopping trip in Chicago. We hit it off, and even as I was retrieving my duffel and barracks bags from the luggage carousel, we kept talking. Olivia asked if her driver could drop me somewhere, but before I could answer, my dad arrived. After introductions and a quick exchange of numbers, I left with my dad, figuring it was a pleasant encounter but likely over. I hadn't planned on calling her, and honestly, I didn't think she'd ever call me either. About 12 days later, I was at my father's house when the phone rang. He handed it to me, saying it was for me. I was curious, as I hadn't reconnected with anyone from my high school days. To my surprise, it was Olivia on the line. Right away, she started in on me, complaining about how I hadn't called her. Before she could get too deep into her rant, I cut her off, saying, "I didn't call you. And if you're going to be rude about it, this conversation is over. Goodbye." Then I hung up, thinking that would be the end of it. Later that week, I went out with a few high school buddies to a bar downtown. While grabbing drinks, I noticed a commotion in one corner of the room. I turned to see 2 guys cornering a young woman who was clearly trying to get away. They seemed to be enjoying themselves, and the bouncers just stood there, not doing a thing. Being the good guy I'd always been, I signaled to my friends, walked over, and tapped the bigger of the 2 guys on the shoulder. I asked, "Are you always a bullying jerk, or is tonight just a special occasion? If it's always, we'll find a reason for you to stop, or you can leave. If it's just tonight, walk away and cool off." He looked at me like I'd grown a third eye and sneered, "Listen here, you little jerk, after we're done with this woman, I'm going to pound you so far into the ground, you'll need a week to dig yourself out." The big guy glanced over his shoulder, noticing my 4 friends standing behind me, and his confidence visibly wavered. He gulped, muttering to his buddy, "Let's get out of here. This jerk ruined all the fun." Anyway, then he turned back to the girl and sneered, "Listen, if you're not going to play, don't take drinks from guys." Before he could leave, I grabbed his arm and pressed down hard on his elbow joint, hitting the nerve right where it would affect his hand. I leaned in close and said quietly, "How about you apologize to the lady? If you do, maybe you'll get some feeling back in that hand. Otherwise, they'll squeeze harder, and you won't be able to pick up a pencil for a month." He swallowed hard and mumbled to the girl, "I apologize. Guess I had too much to drink." With that, he and his friend quickly left. I turned to check on the girl, and to my surprise, she snapped, "Mind your own business." I could have handled it. I realized it was Olivia, and I couldn't help but laugh. When I finally caught my breath, I replied, "I see your manners have improved. Do us both a favor and lose my father's phone number. I won't be coming around anymore. Maybe after charm school, you'll figure out how not to piss people off." Then I turned to my friends and said, "I'm heading out. Guys, the company over here is a little too toxic for my taste. See you later." I drove back to my father's house still fuming. After a restless night, I walked into the kitchen the next morning, and there was Olivia sitting at the table chatting with my dad. I immediately turned around, went back to my room, threw on some outdoor clothes, and walked out the front door to cool off. After an hour, I returned to find the house empty, but there was a note on the kitchen table for my dad asking me to call her. I dialed her up, and she immediately started lecturing me about my so-called lack of manners. Fed up, I cut her off and said, "I'll pack my things and stay in a hotel until I can find my own place. Don't tell anyone where I go. I'll call you once I've settled and have a new car. Then maybe you can apologize for getting involved where you're not wanted." I was beyond angry. This was the kind of rage that could make you want to throw out the whole situation, baby and bathwater included. As I packed, the phone kept ringing, but I ignored it. When I was ready, I called a cab and checked into a Holiday Inn on the other side of town. After settling in, I phoned a couple of friends and got the name of a car salesman they recommended as fair and honest. Thanks to my time in the military and the lack of spending options in the desert, I had most of my pay saved up. I called the car salesman my friends had recommended and learned he worked at a nearby Ford dealership. I gave him an idea of what I wanted, and he mentioned they had a couple of Explorers and Escapes that might fit the bill. Since the dealership was close, I walked over to check them out. He showed me a 2-year-old Explorer with the Eddie Bauer package and a 3-year-old basic Explorer. The Escapes on the lot were a little too fancy for my taste, though I liked the size. Then he said, I have a companion dealership across town with a plain Jane Escape that might suit you. Only catch is it's a really bright yellow, and no one seems to want it. Want to go check it out? They'll drive, so I don't have to split the commission. He chuckled, and we headed out in his car. The Escape was as simple as they come, but it had all the essentials I wanted. The yellow was definitely loud, but it didn't bother me. I just needed reliable transportation with 4-wheel drive for Michigan winters. I haggled him down to a good price and left a deposit. Then I took the car to a friend's garage to have it checked out. He promised it would be ready by early afternoon, so I headed to a nearby diner to grab some lunch. When I finished lunch and returned to the shop, my friend gave me the thumbs up on the car's condition, but he recommended getting more aggressive tires for winter. I took the Escape back to the dealer, talked with the salesman, and he arranged for me to get a set of mud and snow tires, including the wheels, at a local tire store. Since I didn't have a permanent place yet, the tire shop offered to hold the tires for a week. After finalizing the deal and sorting out the temporary tags, I drove back to the hotel with transportation sorted. All I needed was civilian clothes and a cell phone before I could start searching for a place to rent. A quick trip to Walmart the next morning got me some essentials and a track phone. Then I picked up a newspaper and a local real estate guide from the hotel and went apartment hunting. I toured a few complexes and duplexes, but nothing felt quite right. While driving through some neighborhoods I'd always liked, I spotted a for rent sign on a house in a quiet area. I called the number on the sign and left a message. Just as I started to drive away, my phone rang. It was the landlord. He said he could meet me at the house in 5 minutes, as he lived just a few blocks away. I turned back to wait. When the landlord arrived, we exchanged introductions, and he mentioned that he was actually hoping to sell the house. It was fully furnished, which, according to his realtor, made it harder to sell. Buying a house hadn't been on my radar, but from the outside, it looked pristine. As we walked through the house and around the yard, I was impressed with the condition. The furniture wasn't exactly my style, but it was livable. When I asked about the rent, he quoted a rate that was much lower than anything I'd seen at the complexes or duplexes I'd toured. He added that the first year's rent could be applied as a down payment if I decided to buy. When I asked about the sale price, he named a figure I could afford and offered to include it in the lease agreement if I wanted the option to buy later. We shook hands, he gave me his lawyer's contact info, and I scheduled an appointment for the next morning. Back at the hotel, I called my father's house and left a message with my new cell number. Still irritated by his meddling, I asked him to keep the number private and only to call in an emergency, or if he promised to stop interfering. It may sound harsh, but my father was still trying to manage my life, a major reason I joined the military in the first place. At 27, a skilled veteran, I didn't need a babysitter or someone constantly offering unsolicited advice. I found a job with a local electronics company and eventually bought the house I had been renting. My father and I patched things up, and I learned that when Olivia visited him, she actually wanted to apologize and thank me for stepping in to help her at the bar. I reached out to Olivia, accepted her apologies, and then moved on. Then, during a service call for a local business where their security system's video recorder was malfunctioning, I had an unexpected encounter. The receptionist greeted me and called for the security director, and out came Olivia, all business. She led me to the security setup and showed me the faulty recorder. After about 10 minutes, I realized someone had tried to fix a non-existent problem and had crossed a few cables. Olivia was relieved that the issue was resolved and asked if I'd be open to meeting for lunch sometime. I agreed and found myself looking forward to it. After that lunch, we began dating and continued for about 6 months before I asked Olivia to marry me. She agreed but explained that there were a few things that might complicate things. Her family not only owned the business where I'd seen her, but several others across the county. She also told me her father, whom she referred to as father and not dad, required her to have a prenuptial agreement before marriage. I told Olivia that money wasn't important to me and that if the prenuptial agreement was fair, I had no problem with it. She was curious about how I could dismiss money so easily. I explained that I was healthy, had a good-paying job, a house, a car, and all the things I needed to be comfortable. I asked her why it was so important to have more money than you really need, whether luxuries were so essential that acquiring them became the main goal. She admitted she wasn't sure since she had always had money. While she wasn't as focused on status and luxury as her mother, she did enjoy the finer things in life. We agreed on an 8-month engagement. However, Olivia's parents weren't supportive of our marriage. Her mother thought I was beneath them, and her father believed I was after their money. The tension came to a head during a Sunday dinner at their house. They invited a young man from one of their businesses, someone on their social level, and the three of them began making subtle, snide remarks about my job. I endured it for about 20 minutes until the young man made a comment about my parents, suggesting they must not have been good if I had to join the military to get into college. That did it for me. I was furious, but I was smart enough not to let it show too much. I calmly addressed everyone at the table. If you think I'm not good enough for your daughter based on the conversation happening here, then I agree with you, I said. That being said, I was raised to treat family like guests and guests like family. I turned to Olivia and said, if you want to stay engaged to me, don't ever invite me back here again. I asked for my ring back, got it, and walked out. I never returned to their house. Olivia later told me that the rest of the day was filled with shouting, and the guy from the business had said enough to get himself kicked out. She came over to my place afterward and said we could get married in Vegas if that's what it took. I gave her the ring back, and we shared a kiss and more later that night. Things settled down after that, and her father called me about the prenup. I told him to send me a copy of his proposal and I would review it. If it was fair to both of us, I'd sign it. If I didn't understand something, I'd take it to a lawyer. If it wasn't fair, I would offer a counterproposal. We could either accept one or the other or find a compromise. I made it clear that I didn't care about their money and suggested that the best solution would be to put all of Olivia's money into a trust before the wedding. Then I ran into another problem. Olivia's father sent me a prenup that was ridiculously one-sided and would have left me in a terrible position if we ever divorced. I took it to a lawyer who helped me draft 2 different versions. One was just as unfair to Olivia as the one her father sent me. The other was a much more balanced agreement, protecting both Olivia's family's assets and my own, mainly my house, business tools, and savings. The fair proposal stated that, except in cases of adultery or spousal abuse, any assets acquired during the marriage would be split equally between both parties. If the divorce was due to either adultery or abuse, the injured party would receive all assets acquired during the marriage. I sent back the prenup her father had given me with a note that said no way, and sent the one I had made with a note saying, I will sign this one. I knew that would irritate him, so I waited for his response. When the call didn't come the next day, I was surprised. Then I received my mail, and the prenup I had sent was returned, shredded into several pieces. I called Frank, Olivia's father, and laughed, saying I hadn't thought to shred the one he had sent me. I then told him I had a compromise that was fair to both of us and suggested we meet with Olivia and my lawyer the next day. He came with his lawyer, and we met. They requested alimony, which I firmly declined. They also wanted to remove the adultery and abuse clauses, but I stood my ground and refused. They insisted on protecting Olivia's assets, which I agreed to, but I made it clear that none of my assets from before the marriage could be touched. After much negotiation, we finally reached a compromise that reflected my original proposal. Olivia and I signed the documents, and we returned to planning the wedding. I hoped this would be the end of the drama and that we could move forward and start our life together. Unfortunately, that was not the case. As I mentioned, I worked as a service technician and was occasionally sent out of town for customer issues. About 2 weeks before the wedding, I had to leave for a problem that was supposed to be a quick fix requiring only an overnight stay. I told Olivia I'd be back the following evening. She agreed and said she would go to her parents' house the next day to do some last-minute planning with her mother. The issue at the customer site was a simple fix. They needed a line conditioner, which I had in my truck. I set it up and was finished in less than 25 minutes. I could make it back home before dark, so I stopped to buy Olivia some flowers and drove to her apartment. When I arrived, I rang the bell, and she answered the door, wearing a nightgown and robe with smudged lipstick. I handed her the flowers and asked if I could come in. She hesitated, and just then, a man who was the same one from the dinner came around the corner, dressed only in athletic shorts, and asked who I was. I became livid. I told the man that I was her fiancé and asked Olivia what was going on. She said, nothing. I took off her engagement ring and told her the wedding was off. I then informed the man that she had been unfaithful. Olivia started crying, but I simply turned around and left. Later, I received a phone call from Frank, asking what had happened to make Olivia cry. I explained the situation, telling him that he and his wife got their wish. I realized she wasn't the right person for me, and the wedding was off. Frank replied that this was not what Olivia had said. I told him that I understood he had to protect his family, but I would not marry someone who had betrayed me. I suggested he ask Olivia about the man who was nearly naked in her apartment while I was supposed to be out of town. Frank claimed that wasn't what Olivia had told him. I asked him why she was spending time with another man in her apartment when we were supposed to be married in just 3 weeks. He said Olivia had described him as a friend from college. I laughed and asked, if he's just a friend, then why was he not dressed when he came to speak to me? Frank apologized and said he would get to the bottom of the situation. I told him to do what he needed to do, but I made it clear that I would not be marrying Olivia under any circumstances. I ended the conversation there. Olivia called multiple times, but I ignored them, sending each one to voicemail and deleting them without listening. I then called my father, telling him to stay out of it, as this was something between Olivia and me. He said that if Olivia called her, she would talk to her, but she wouldn't interfere further. I reassured him that despite everything, I still loved him. We ended the conversation, and I went to bed. The next day, when I came home from work, Olivia was sitting on the steps of my house. She said we needed to talk. I replied, no, we don't. You've shown me exactly how important I am to you. We were engaged, and I found you spending time with another man less than a month before we were supposed to get married. We won't be getting married. We won't be dating, and we won't even be talking after today. If you don't leave right now, they'll sell this house and move. Then I'll make sure no one we both know will ever know where I am. I can't stand a liar and a cheat. Too bad I ruined your little affair yesterday. Did it continue after I left? Was your other lover as good as I used to be? Was it worth throwing all of your parents' plans away? She started crying again, but I simply walked around her and went in through the back door since she was blocking the front. She rang the doorbell for about 5 minutes before eventually leaving. I didn't hear from her for several days, but then I received a surprising call from her mother asking me to reconsider. I explained what had happened and told her to ask Olivia and get the truth directly from her. I repeated that the wedding was not going to happen. I added, I'm sorry, but you must have been right when she asked. I replied, I'm obviously not good enough for your daughter. She showed me that by what she did. And just think if she's pregnant, it's not mine. I heard a sharp gasp, and then the phone line went silent as she hung up. A week passed, and then I was called into the office. My boss and the company owner informed me that they had an offer to sell the company for an amount that seemed too good to be true. I said, let me finish this meeting. Mr. Phillips wants the company, but I have to leave right after. George, the owner, confirmed that Mr. Phillips was indeed interested but added, no, he doesn't insist that you be fired. He actually asked me to ask you if you would work for him. I told George that I didn't think so, and that I'd write up my resignation letter as soon as I got back to my computer. I also expressed my frustration with Olivia's family and their manipulative behavior. I explained that I had enough savings to get by for a few months, but I would be putting my house up for sale and leaving the city once it's sold. I also told George that I wouldn't be sharing my new location with anyone. George seemed to understand and assured me he'd write me a glowing recommendation. I thanked him, then went to my computer, typed the letter, and handed it to him. He gave me my final paycheck, along with an additional one, which he said was a bonus for being a great employee. He advised me to use his home phone number as a reference since Mr. Phillips would be taking over next week. I asked him not to tell the new owner about my resignation, letting him find out when he reviewed the payroll. In just 2 days, I found a new job only 40 miles away. When my house sold through an agent of Mr. Phillips, I left and didn't look back for over 18 months. As my father's health began to decline, I decided to move closer to Cleveland. I bought a spacious ranch-style home with 4 bedrooms and moved my father in with me. We rented out his house, which helped cover some of his medical expenses. The tenant mentioned that a young woman had been trying to track down our new address. I made it clear to him that he should not share any information with her, and if he felt uncomfortable with her behavior, he should contact her father using the number from my old workplace. My new job was similar to the one I had at George Company, but after a year, I realized there was no upward mobility. I had grown frustrated with the lack of opportunities for advancement in the company, so I began looking for something more promising. Eventually, I found an opportunity to invest in a company that was starting to make headway in the bank equipment sales and service industry. I was going to manage the service side, while my partner Jason Matthews would handle sales. To my surprise, the bank agreed with my plan, and they provided me with a business loan to cover the remaining amount needed to purchase a 50 stake in the company. I worked hard in the field, and over time found a couple of guys who were qualified and diligent. They were also very security conscious, so we decided to start offering services like combination changes and lock replacements. Business was going well, and on one of my calls, I ran into Olivia, who was now working as a loan officer at a small bank. Her father had bought the bank, and the problem they had was a sticky safe lock. It only took me about 30 minutes to get the small safe open and another few minutes to install the new lock and set the combination. As we were talking, Olivia admitted she had made a huge mistake and wanted to get back together. I asked her if she could prove she was trustworthy. She said she had learned her lesson and still loved me. I then asked if she had ever told her parents the truth, or if I was still the villain in the story. She hesitated and said, "Sort of." I stopped her and said, "Olivia, I haven't stopped loving you, but I will not be blamed for something that I wasn't at fault for, especially when you lied to your parents about it. Would you tell me the truth about that night?" I had a couple of questions about what I saw. She nodded, and her expression was a mixture of fear and guilt. She then said, "Yes, I'll answer honestly, and I won't hide anything from you. Can we stop talking here at work? Would you meet me at the diner down the street after your shift?" I agreed, and we set a time. When I arrived, she was already there. I ordered coffee and sat down in the back where she had gotten a booth. She gave me a small smile and tried to apologize once more, but I raised my hand to stop her. I said, "Are you ready to answer my questions? I need complete and honest answers. If I sense any hesitation, incompleteness, or dishonesty, I will leave, and I won't see you again at work or outside of work. If you make me feel comfortable with your answers, we can start fresh. That means dating again and maybe even an engagement someday. This is your only chance, so use it wisely. Shall I begin?" She gave me a mixture of a scared and annoyed look, but finally said quietly, "Yes." I asked my first question. "Was that the only time you cheated on me after we got engaged?" She responded, "No, but he was the only one, and it was just 2 other times." I followed up with, "Did you have sex with him either that night or the other 2 times?" Her reply was simple yes. I asked the last question. "Will you tell your parents the truth about that guy and how I caught you?" She pleaded, "I can't. Please don't make me choose between telling them and letting you go." I finished my coffee, laid a 5 bill on the table, and stood up. As I walked away, I said, "You already made your choice. I told you I needed honesty, and you're still making me the bad guy. For the last time, goodbye." She called out, "Wait," and for some reason, I stopped. I turned to face her, and she said sadly, "I will tell them tonight." I replied, "That's not good enough." I pulled out my phone, handed it to her, and said, "I have your father's business phone number. They'll call him, and you will tell him now, using my phone and my dialing. Then he'll call your parents' house, and when your mother picks up, you'll tell her too. Is that a deal?" "Okay," she said quietly. I dialed her father's business number, and when he answered, I introduced myself and told him that his daughter needed to speak with him. I handed Olivia the phone, and she began explaining everything. She admitted to cheating on me, explaining that I had caught her because I returned early. She also said she wanted to clear the air and acknowledge that Nathan was not the bad guy. She told him she was sorry for lying, but that she had been ashamed of getting caught. I took my phone back and started to leave, but before I did, I said loud enough for her to hear, "I cannot accept that she is only ashamed that she got caught and not ashamed of the cheating itself. Your first impression was right that I wasn't good enough for your daughter, because a vow is very important to me." I apologized for the way the conversation had unfolded, but explained that Olivia had wanted to start over with dating, and I had insisted she tell him the truth. I hung up and left, but when I saw Olivia's car following me, I drove to the local library. I entered through the front door, and as soon as I saw her get out of her car, I slipped out the back and drove home. The next day, when I arrived at the office, Olivia was waiting for me. I told her, "I've said all I'm going to say to you. If you don't leave me alone, they'll file a stalking complaint with the police." She left, and I didn't hear from her for a couple of weeks. Then our company received a service call from her bank, and all of our techs were out on other jobs. I told Jason about the situation, so he called the manager. After he finished the call, he said, "Sorry, but it was a legitimate request. They have a carrier stuck in one of their drive-through tubes." I told Jason that I would take the call, but if I ran into any issues with Olivia, I would sell my share of the company and leave. He looked at me and said, "God, you're so stubborn. Have you ever done something stupid?" I replied, "Of course I have. My problem is that not only did she do something stupid, dishonest, and disgraceful, but then she blamed me for the breakup. She had a chance to clear everything up last week, but all she admitted was that she was sorry she got caught." I paused and added, I learned before I was 10 years old that the punishment and embarrassment for making a mistake or doing something stupid doesn't last as long as being caught in a lie. I went and cleared the tube, and when I went to get the service ticket signed, the manager tried to send me to Olivia to get her signature. I said, "If you don't sign it, tell me someone besides Ms. Johnson. Otherwise, I'll go back to my office with an unsigned ticket and well bill your bank regardless. If you have an issue with that, we can invoke our 90-day cancellation clause, and you can find a different service company. If you need an explanation as to why I'm taking this stance, ask Ms. Johnson. I want no dealings with her, even on a professional level." She signed it and told me she would report me to the owner. I replied, "And the owner?" She just shook her head and said, "They'll talk to Mr. Phillips. We may invoke that 90-day clause. That will be my recommendation." I agreed to that and left, thinking, great, I've just cost the company business by being a jerk. When I got back to the office, I told Jason what happened, and he was furious. He said that if he could get the money, he would buy me out. I was just as pissed, so I gave him the contact at my bank. His mouth dropped open, and he quickly said, "I can't run this business by myself, and none of the techs are at a point where they can do your job. Let's just take you off the service call list, and you can just manage from here on out." I agreed to Jason's suggestion, took myself off the service roster, and went home. Later, I received a call from Frank, asking why I wouldn't deal with his daughter. After explaining everything to him, he said he would transfer Olivia from the bank to one of his other businesses. I told him that wasn't necessary because I had already removed myself from the service roster and would no longer be calling on customers. I added that if he still felt something needed to be done, he could invoke the 90-day clause. He said he didn't want to do that, as all the other service groups had done a poor job in the past. I apologized for my behavior, acknowledging that it wasn't professional, but explained that his daughter had pushed me over the edge. I apologized again, wished him well, and ended the call. About 6 months later, I was having a steak with some friends at the local Outback when I saw Olivia walk in with a group of people I recognized from the bank. She didn't notice me at first, but as she was being seated, our eyes met. She gave a small nod before turning her attention back to her group. She looked a little sad. As my group finished up and I got my check, I left the restaurant. When I got home, I saw I had a message on my home phone. It was from Frank, asking me to call Olivia. He said she was so depressed, not eating or sleeping regularly. I called the last number I had for Olivia, but there was no pickup, so I left a message with my cell phone number, asking her to call. I also made sure my caller ID function was blocked on my home phone, considering everything that had happened in the past. A couple of hours later, just as I was getting into bed, my phone rang. It was Frank, telling me that Olivia had collapsed after leaving the restaurant and was taken to the hospital. One of the people in her group had called 911, and she had been admitted for a series of tests. I found myself in a difficult position. I still had feelings for her, but she had consistently blamed me for the breakup. I told Frank, "He'll think about it tonight, and if I decide not to see her, he'll call you. I can't make a decision right now." Despite my reservations, I ended up going to see her. Fortunately, her parents were there. Olivia looked terrible thin, with puffy eyes and a haunted expression. I greeted everyone, then asked Olivia about the issues her father had mentioned. Her response was emotional. "Because I love you, and you dumped me. You've treated me terribly," she nearly shouted. I asked her parents if we could step out into the hall to talk, and they agreed. "I think it's best if I leave now," I said. "Olivia is very upset, but I've made it clear that I will not tolerate being with someone who cheated." I continued, "The last time I called you, Frank, she was about to tell you the full story of the breakup. I was there, and the only thing she seemed ashamed of was getting caught. I still love her, but until she accepts responsibility for what she did, I cannot have any further contact with her. If this disappoints or upsets you both, I'm truly sorry, but I have to prioritize my own well-being. I hope that one day you will understand that I'm not a bad person, just an honest one. Goodbye." A couple of weeks later, Jason came to me and said that Mr. Phillips wanted to buy him out. I was taken aback and angry. Jason mentioned that I should have the right of first refusal. I asked him how much it would take for me to buy a share. After he gave me the number, I contacted the bank, and they agreed to hold the loan. I also told Jason to inform Mr. Phillips that I was now the sole owner of the company. About 3 hours later, I received a call from Frank. He asked me why I had bought Jason's share. I explained that it was because I could no longer work with him, and if Mr. Phillips had purchased Jason's share, he would have likely put Olivia in the company in some capacity. I made it clear that I could not work with Olivia. I then asked if Olivia had changed or added anything to her version of our breakup. He said they hadn't asked. Frustrated, I responded, now that I'm the owner, I'm going to formally invoke the 90-day cancellation clause. The only other option is for you to buy me out. I then ended the call. I immediately called Jason to update him on the situation. I also offered to sell him his share back for the price I paid, -3, if Frank did not buy me out within 72 hours. Frank responded, saying, okay, I finally understand that one way or another, you want to have contact with Olivia. I don't want to lose your company's excellent service. I will buy you out, but I want a non-compete agreement. I firmly replied, no. If you buy me out, I will start a new company in 6 weeks. I'll give you my price, non-negotiable, and I will agree in the sales documents that I won't solicit business from any companies you own. I also won't attempt to poach any employees from your company, but if they come to me for a job, I will hire them. Frank's response was terse. All right, what's your price? I told Frank the amount it would take for him to buy me out. The price I quoted was a 25 premium over what I had paid Jason for his share, which was twice what Frank had paid me for the company. He agreed to the terms. Things continued smoothly for almost a year when I saw an article in the business section announcing that my former company was filing for bankruptcy. It turned out that my new company had taken all of their clients except for Mr. Phillips' bank. Frank called and offered to sell the company back to me for the amount of its accounts payable, which was about 30 of what he had paid me for it. I accepted the offer and agreed to honor the original contract with his bank. After everything settled, I became the sole shareholder in an LLC focused on bank equipment sales and service. I hired Jason as my vice president of sales. Both of us made money, and the business continued to grow. Unfortunately, my father's health continued to decline, and I made arrangements to hire a live-in home care assistant through an agency. Somehow, Olivia found out about this and called my father to offer her services. Although I wasn't pleased with the situation, Olivia had always gotten along well with my father, so I caved. Olivia, I must admit, was very good for my father. Whenever there was a crisis, Olivia would promptly contact the doctor, and as a result, my father's outlook improved, and he became much happier. Over time, I found myself being drawn back to Olivia. I realized that I had never stopped loving her, but I also knew that without being able to trust her again, there would be no possibility of rekindling our relationship. About 10 months into this arrangement, Olivia asked for an additional night off beyond her usual time off. She mentioned that she had a date and wanted the time to herself. I said, of course. I'm glad to see you moving on. If this happens again, just let me know, and I'll make arrangements if I'm unable to be here. The night she went out, I realized I was feeling jealous. I tried to suppress it, but I couldn't. After she left, I wandered around the house, unable to focus on anything, until my father, noticing my behavior, laughed and said, I knew it. You still love that girl. When are you going to forgive her? I replied, I'll forgive her when she tells everyone that I wasn't the cause of our breakup, when I can trust her again, and when she is genuinely sorry for cheating, not just for getting caught, but only when she proves she deserves forgiveness. I told Olivia that she could have a night off whenever she wanted, as long as she gave me 24 hours notice. She thanked me and assured me that she wouldn't take advantage of the privilege. For the next 3 weeks, Olivia went out one night each week. One day, while I was out for lunch, I happened to run into one of her friends. I decided to ask if Olivia had mentioned anything about the guy she was dating. The response I got was a laugh, followed by, she doesn't have any new boyfriends. She's just trying to make you jealous. She spends those nights out with me or one of her other friends and doesn't even talk to any guy. That revelation made me even more curious about her feelings. I realized that I still had strong feelings for her, and it prompted me to think about things for a few days. Eventually, I decided to explore where things might go if we tried dating again. About 2 weeks later, I sat down with Olivia and asked her if she had come to terms with the truth behind our breakup. She said that she had. I then asked if she was ready to tell her parents the full story of what caused the breakup, to which she responded that she already had. I asked her if she would be open to starting over, restarting the relationship from scratch. I made it clear that there were some rules we both needed to follow. I emphasized again that we both needed to follow these rules for things to work between us. I laid out the rules clearly: no dates or sex with anyone else. Company functions must allow spouse attendance to ensure both parties can attend. Full honesty about money, plans, and any social events. A prenuptial agreement that protects both my assets as well as hers. And no marriage or even plans for marriage until I felt ready. Olivia looked at me, stunned, and asked, "What caused you to become so stubborn?" I laughed lightly and replied, "Oh, I don't know. Maybe a lying, cheating fiancé." Can you think of a reason why that wouldn't upset me? Her expression turned sad as she said, yeah, I deserve that. I'm really sorry and sad that my actions made you change from how sweet and caring you were. I snapped back. We wouldn't even be having this conversation if I didn't care. I not only care, but I still have deep feelings for you. But that doesn't mean I'll forget the hurt. She seemed to understand, and after a moment of quiet reflection, she asked, okay, so are we going to start dating again? We did, and within a year, we were engaged and married. Olivia was a beautiful bride. Life was good. Work was thriving. Sales were up, and the money was rolling in. Once we got married, I hired a home healthcare company to assist with my father's care. Olivia complained about it, but I explained to her that while she had been the backup plan before, I needed her to take care of me as well. A couple of years into the marriage, things began to unravel. Jason decided to leave the company, and Olivia began to distance herself emotionally. She started going out for girls' nights out, and our intimacy virtually disappeared. She began complaining about almost everything. According to her, I wasn't successful enough, I wasn't socially active enough, and I just wasn't enough, period. ID had enough. I told her, either you get an attitude adjustment or you get out. Unsurprisingly, she didn't take it well. Olivia broke down crying and slammed the bedroom door. Suddenly, it hit me Olivia had always wanted to wait to have kids, and I began to wonder if there was more to her behavior. I decided to investigate further. The next day, I went to the office and contacted the private investigation company we used for security checks on employees. John Chambers, the investigator assigned to the case, said he could do a preliminary check within a day or two, but a more thorough investigation would take a couple of weeks. I instructed him to proceed with the preliminary report and continue the full investigation until my questions were answered. John called me about a week and a half later with the news I had been expecting. Olivia was cheating. She wasn't just involved with my former partner, Jason Matthews, but also with the man from the dinner, the one I had caught her with previously. John had obtained explicit pictures, videos, and audio recordings as evidence. He recommended I not watch or listen to the material as it was very raw. Instead, he suggested I provide the DVD to my divorce attorney. I asked John to make 3 copies of the DVD. I wanted one for my attorney, one for Olivia's father, and one to keep in my safe as I didn't trust Olivia's family or friends not to destroy the evidence. I also requested 5 notarized copies of his written report. I spoke with several divorced friends to find a reputable attorney, someone who would aggressively protect my assets. The firm of Wilson, Lopez, and Taylor came highly recommended, so I scheduled an appointment. I gathered all the relevant financial and legal documents for both myself and my business and met with Kathleen Wilson as scheduled. I provided her with my documents and the DVD along with the prenup. She was impressed with how well prepared I was and assured me that if the documents supported what I had said, I would retain all my assets, and the accumulation of wealth during the marriage would be mine. She even mentioned that given her own wealth, she would likely have to pay me spousal maintenance alimony. I instructed her to file for divorce and to seek a restraining order to prevent Olivia from coming to my business, my home, or contacting me. I explained that Olivia was often blind to her own faults and would likely attempt to retaliate. Additionally, I wanted to pursue legal action against both men involved, as well as against Mr. Phillips' business since Olivia and the other man worked together there. Kathleen, who insisted on being called by her first name, said, Nate, he'll take care of everything you've asked, and he'll also find a way to make sure she is forced to move out of your home and have no contact with you unless it's through a lawyer or an officer of the court. Do you know where she'll be, say, Wednesday or Thursday evening? I responded, yes. According to the written report, she meets Jason on Wednesday afternoon, and on Thursdays, she has 4-hour lunches at her father's house. They don't return until around 4:45 p.m. to finish their workday. I'd really prefer for her to be served at her father's business office. Thursday works for me. You're almost as vindictive as I am, she replied. Thursday came, and things were set into motion. Olivia and her father were served, and my phone started ringing almost immediately. My secretary complained that I wasn't answering calls from either my wife or Mr. Phillips. She mentioned that she wasn't hired to get involved in my personal issues. I asked her, do you like your job? She replied, yes, but I didn't sign up for this. Still holding firm to my stance, I said, there's the door to my office. 12 steps from that door is the outside entrance. If you don't want to follow directions, don't let the door hit you on the way out. You know you're only supposed to direct those 2, and the others I've mentioned to call my attorney. If you can't handle it, look for a different position. She started tearing up and said, I'm sorry. am just so upset that you're mad at me for forgetting about the attorney that addressed the immediate crisis. But it didn't solve all the underlying issues. As expected, Olivia filed a countersuit and demanded 50 of all my assets. Kathleen laughed and advised me to place all of my non-business assets into an escrow account. She also mentioned that she had heard from Mr. Phillips' company attorney, who was offering a settlement. When I heard the amount, I couldn't help but laugh. Tell the attorney that he'll settle for 15 of the company, with Olivia and the other person being terminated for cause, and for Olivia to sign the papers as presented to her. He'll instruct them to come back with any offer that spares him, and he'll reject it immediately, but I will settle for Olivia's signature on the papers, 10 million, and for him to be fired. And of course, they must cover all of your fees, so charge what you need. That's what eventually happened. Then, after my father passed, things took a turn for the worse, leading us to the moment when I saw the police car. Jason looked devastated, guilty, and nearly in tears. He dropped his end of the safe, causing Olivia to lose her grip as well. She ended up trapping her foot under the safe, and I heard the bone crunch from where I stood several feet away. She screamed, though it sounded more like anger than pain. Then she yelled, "You have to ruin everything. Why couldn't you wait until tomorrow to come here?" I was stunned at first, but then the anger took hold, and I became completely calm. Through gritted teeth, I said, "Officer, I want these two arrested on every charge you can bring. I want a court official or an officer to go inside and inventory the cabin for any damages and make note of anything missing. You saw the cut lock on the gate. This woman, me ex-wife, has no claim on this property or its contents. I have the deed transfer papers in my car, and her name is nowhere on them." The officer proceeded to arrest Jason and Olivia, handcuffing them both before calling for an ambulance. He then asked me to come with him while the crime scene technicians finished their work. We went to a local diner, where the officer mentioned that he had dealt with my grandfather in the past and found him to be honorable and trustworthy. He also shared that the sheriff's department had been keeping an eye on the gate because they knew the cabin was vacant. Once the crime scene team finished their investigation, the charges against Jason and Olivia were escalated to include conspiracy to commit arson. It turned out that they had brought a stack of newspapers and a small candle, placed the newspapers in the main part of the cabin, and set the candle on top. If the candle had burned through, the cabin would have caught fire before anyone could have extinguished it. Everything that Jason and Olivia had taken was recovered, the cabin damage was repaired, and the charges were officially filed. Jason pled guilty and was sentenced to 7 to 10 years in prison. Mr. Phillips arranged for a psychiatrist to examine Olivia, and she was committed to a private mental institution. She still had the pending charges awaiting her release, if and when that happens. While in the hospital, Olivia was determined to be pregnant. The baby boy was born there and placed in the care of his grandparents. I was not the father, and when they insisted on a DNA test, it turned out that neither Jason nor the other man was the biological father. Despite everything, I still cared for Olivia, but I realized that life had to go on, and I didn't need the pain and complications anymore. Thanks for watching. Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.